Seems we're officially ready. Thank you, Rob. So welcome to tonight's meeting of the Expanded Budget Committee for Tompkins County. The adventure continues. As usual, the adventure is preferred to be crisp. That said, let's see, is JR here? I do not see JR Claiborne. And the Veterans Services Office is first on our agenda. So let's see, in JR's absence, let's see, next down is TC3. I don't think they're here yet.
Deb's here.
Oh, Deb's here. Okay. Well, if Deb's here, that's all we need. Deb, why don't you go ahead?
Well, I'm actually not the presenter, but Bill said he was jumping on at 4:30. I can text him and tell him that you are ready for him. It'll probably take him 1 minute to join.
Okay. Taylor tells me he's here. So.
Oh, good. There he is. Great. Okay.
Bill, if you're ready, we're ready for you.
I'm just here for moral support.
Okay. So TC3's materials can be found on page 5-35 of your budget book, and we will wait for Bill to take it away. Okay, we see your presentation, Bill.
I'm texting him that we can't hear him.
Okay. Maybe he can't hear us.
One person. Oh.
Now it says reviewing Bill's screen.
Okay.
Oh, there you are. There you are.
I'm getting there. It's all the clicking and making sure I got everything. Okay.
Okay. Oh, that pesky clicking.
I know, really, because it's all these different softwares. All right. So thank you very much. I appreciate all your time and effort to listen to us. You've been great supporters. The purpose, this is the first time we're going through this cycle. The college typically goes through the appropriates funds by coming through the finance committee and then building a resolution and going to the legislative group. But the college itself has been moving to a 3 to 5 year business planning, which translates into what I believe to be better financial and fiscal responsibilities, planning for things, looking at things, and trying to modify the budget and all of our operations and all of our activities to reflect where we want to be rather than where we would be if we were only looking at 1 year in advance. And so this is our first attempt to even go earlier than what we've done in the past by introducing some of our thoughts and concepts into your budget cycle so that the money is there. And then as I understand the process, if it was in the budget, then it still would go through the finance committee and then would still go to the legislature. But at least the funds would already be there if you would agree to move forward with it. So that I think is a better approach to this because it allows for many more of you to participate in this much earlier.
Thank you, Bill. If that's what Lisa and Norma agreed to, then we're A-okay with that.
Okay, great. So talked a little bit about this, about the multi-year operating and capital funding. That's the other thing that we haven't really done a lot of in the past. My guess is over the last 10 years, we really haven't sat with you prior to this last year and a half to talk about capital funding and how all that works. If we're successful, then we increase the financial stability for both of us. And what I mean by that is you're not looking for funds so late in the game, and we're not asking for funds so late in the game. We do get the critical funding for some of our programs right up front. Many of these programs that we're putting in place are going to be tied to salaries of some type. So you really do need to sort of plan for these things over for a 2 or 3 year pilot or to put this in place to make sure it all works. There's nobody that's going to agree to come on board, quit their job, come on board for a year, and then not know if they're going to have a job or not. And allows broader reach into and depth into your whole organization, not just the legislators, but also the business on the business side. And we get to invest in long-term strategies for new students in the sponsoring counties. We get to attract new students in non-sponsoring counties. And the reason why that's important is because they're the ones that help to keep your base rate low. Because the more students we get outside of the two sponsor counties, the more chargebacks we are able to charge. And that not only increases our operating revenues, but also we get $300 per FTE for capital that allows us to keep current in some of the bonds that we already have with you. And of course, if we do all this right, we improve student retention, which improves our results and graduates and everything else at the end. Reoccurring capital funding. So there's a couple different areas that we're presenting here. So if we talk about capital funding for a second, we have spent the last couple of years all working together. And I think most everybody understands at this point that the buildings and the property of TC3 are clearly owned by the two counties. And that what we should be doing is we should be establishing and building capital reserves for deferred maintenance like you would your own buildings and grounds. And so typically you would be putting money aside before the object, let's say the air conditioning or whatever the case is, the boilers die or need to be replaced. You already have those funds in place because you've been reserving for them over the 20, 30 years leading up to needing to replace it. We're not all that able to do that. I understand that between the two counties. It assumes that you have the sufficient funds to be able to do that. But I do know you do something like that. I don't know if you're able to cover 100% or not, but it is a viable methodology to build a reserve for capital replacements. The other reasons that we need to do this is TC3 is prohibited by education law from funding capital. So there's nothing we can do. If something breaks on a capital, that's a capital expense, we are prohibited from funding that. So it either has to come from the county, the state, the feds, or some donation. And if it's a critical item, we're obviously concerned about the fact that it could be down for a period of time. It also, for us to go through the normal process in which we could get New York State to match 50%, that's a 9-month lead time that we would have to start that process. And so that's not going to help us for emergencies in any ways. These reserves, there's two types of capital projects. One that we plan specific for an item like we're doing right now and outside with sidewalks and the asphalt. But the other is just a deferred maintenance account in which the funds go in there and are sitting there ready for a disaster, a critical disaster that takes place, or a rainy day emergency fund. Some of you might like that idea better. Deferred maintenance, we created at Mike's request, made a lot of sense, a deferred maintenance advisory committee. We meet monthly and we discuss where we are in the active projects and where the next set of needs are going to come from and whether there are resources out there beyond the county and ourselves to claim those resources and start to adopt and get additional programs in place much more quickly as a result of such. And two legislative representatives are on this committee from each county: Mike Lane, Randy Brown, Kathy Bishop, and Chris Newell. Just to give you some perspective, TC3 is 408,000 square feet. It's 48 years old, and sits on 220 acres. And the ask here is that we're seeking to build this fund this year by $500,000, of which New York State would cover $250,000, Tompkins would feed in 155,000, and Cortland would put in 95,000. The second area that we're focused on is reoccurring operating funding. So I'm using the word reoccurring because when we talk about operating funds in the past, they tend to be a one-year discussion. And going back to the objectives, I think we need to think a little bit longer term, and that we're funding certain types of things that are never going to go away. They're not going to go away after a year. And therefore, as opposed to coming to you asking for funds to go into base aid, which once they go in, they never come back out, it can never be reduced. This is a slightly different model that I believe Cortland can live with. Cortland is, I guess, struggles with committing forever and ever and ever an increase to base aid, but they've been very open over the last couple of years, conversations about funding specific things that have a lifespan and that end in the event that things don't go so well with Cortland. And so I think that it's prudent to move forward with a methodology that both counties can adopt. So on the revenue side, we've got some challenges. Core enrollments declined 32% during COVID. Our New York State base aid funding has significantly been reduced, and HERF, which is been a big savior of ours over the last couple of years, expires in June of 2023. Our objective, our long-term objective, is to build our enrollments back up to the pre-pandemic rates, which is 540 additional FTEs. That would be where we were in 2019-20. Fall, we're up 15% in new, so we're right on plan, but it only makes up 26 FTEs of that 540. So it does take time to build it. You build with the new, those new become continuing students. They're a cohort, the next new come in, they become the continuing, and so it does take time to build it up. Once it gets going pretty fast, but it can easily take a year to 2 to 3 to build to the point where you'll see where we get that 540 FTEs back. And just to know that when we're looking at new students, you have to invest the prior year in order to see the benefits in the current year. So in order to see a fall semester successful, we are actually investing in the prior year to build those enrollments up. And so what I'm asking for here is $145,980 because it came out because of your percentages, but that the college would actually contribute you and Cortland together would contribute $234,000 together over and commit to a 3-year minimum investment there. That comes out to about 4.8% on the base aid that you're paying right now. Specifically, where did that number come from? It came from very specific projects. So the first thing is that I'm sorry, before I go there, as far as where TC is today in expending its funds, we are very fiscally responsible. We've received the same base aid from the two of you for the last 4 years. The percentages have changed a little bit between the two counties, but basically it's the same, almost $5 million for the last 4 years. When you look at and benchmark us against the other 29 community colleges, TC3 is the third lowest cost per FTE. We're at $11,400 per FTE. And the average is $14,200 for the remaining community colleges. And as far as where the county's contribution sit compared to your colleagues, you are contributing right now 17% of the total revenue. The average across all the other community colleges is 25% from their sponsoring counties. We picked those two funding sources based on needs assessment. And so on the deferred maintenance side, our projects are estimated that if we did everything that we think we need to do in the next 10 years, there's about $40 million that needs to be worked on. And so the request of 155,000 compared to what is needed is very, very low. But we also recognizing the fact that there are lots of creative ways to get these things done. We've done so in the sidewalk and the paving, and that Cortland is doing the work as an in-kind gesture for their proportion so that they didn't have to come up with those funds. And so we do also want to recognize that there are only so many projects that we can take on. There are, and that you do not have deep pockets, neither one of you, the two of you. So we were more conservative this year in looking for a total of $500,000 versus the year before of actually pulling down $1 million. On the operating side, we had what was a capital issue with our network. Our network was over eight years old. It was vulnerable to the outside based on being that old. We only had one staff member that knew how to manage it and could deal with all the threats, the outside threats coming in or inside threats coming in through students' laptops that connect to the network. And so to replace that network, it was going to be about $825,000. And we'd need to get an additional person to help manage the installation and management of that. We compared it to a network management contract, and we spent a year doing this. We went with a closed bidding process, and bottom line is we felt that that was a much better solution. It's $150,000 a year, but now it's an operating expense. It's no longer in the it requires capital funding. So that is an example of the money that we're requesting over the next 3 years would be helping to pay for that specific cost. A couple other softwares, there are multiple softwares out there that will help, but the three I picked as examples, Mongoose texting services, it's $48,000 a year. That has really helped us to connect and keep in contact with students. That is the best way to communicate to them, whether it be on an event in the school, whether it be getting into the enrollment office to get paperwork completed, whether the teachers need things to be done by a specific time frame. This is the best way to communicate. DocuSign, remote signatures, especially for those that are international students, for those that are out of region, to have them physically come up and sign paperwork or to send documents back and forth is problematic. And then student orientation software. This was hugely successful. It's not a lot of money, but it's hugely successful. And it provides a really great first pass student experience, allowing them access and knowledge about the school and getting them excited that they made the right decision. And so the show rate is improving, but also the retention rate improves. I'm guessing this is the format that you're going to get to see across all your folks. So last year you contributed to us $3.6 million. The target, which is baseline, is $3 million. And then between the two, the capital requirement plus the incremental longer term operational requirements, plus what you already contributed and committed to for the workforce development, those three amounts come out to the $426,000. So technically, I guess we're asking for $152,000 less this year in 2023, your budget year 2023, than we took down from you in 2022. And lastly, this is just the detail of the three projects themselves. So it's $145,000 for the operational networking support and softwares, $126,000 for the workforce development, and $155,000 for the capital. And that is it. So with that, I'll take any questions.
Thank you. Thank you, Bill. I just want to say from my perspective on BCP that it has been a real joy that to have your proactive approach. We haven't been taken by surprise in any way for the last couple of years with problems at TC3. The foundation is a whole other story, but that's not your problem. So thank you for making the effort to tell us in advance of where the college is going and what you think they're going to need, because it just makes it easier for all of us. Does anybody have any questions for Bill? Annie? Yeah, I see.
Thank you. Thank you for the presentation, Bill. Oh, not really a question, but regarding, you were talking about this asking for some money in OTRs versus the base rate that the two counties give you. And so thank you for explaining that. If Cortland is comfortable with this method, I am really happy to be able to figure out how we can help you. And if it's through OTRs, especially looking at, the financing for infrastructure and capital improvements, deferred maintenance. So really glad to see this in here as the OTR, as one of the OTRs. So thank you very much. And thank you for all you and your staff have done to keep you going, keep all of us going through the pandemic.
Well, thank you. And you guys have been incredibly supportive throughout this whole process. And TC3 really does have an excellent executive team. And Amy has just been a breath of fresh air going through this. Much of these concepts that we're presenting right now are coming from her. So.
Good to know. Thank you. Randy?
Yes, Bill, thank you. On the network system that you want to put in, how long of a contract are they going to require from you? And if I remember correctly, was that include all new wiring and those kinds of things?
Yep. It's a 5-year contract. I thought 5 years is too long for me to get Cortland on board.
Thank you. Do you have anything else on that, Randy? Okay, thanks. Mike Lane.
Bill, I just wanted to make sure you're plugged in on our recovery grant program.
We are. We're already setting groups of people to meet and having those conversations.
Great.
Thank you.
Okay, and I noticed that in your squad there, you've got Amy Kramenik. So I just wanted to invite her to provide any comments she wants to or not.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here and to be presenting to support Bill in this presentation. As he said, we have a great team, and as you may have seen, our enrollment is starting to inch up, which we see as a very positive sign. And in the fall too, we'll be starting to work on retention and really continuing that work, because the students who are entrusting Tompkins Cortland with their education, we want to make certain we're keeping them and we are seeing them through to completion and graduation. And I do also want to thank the members of the legislature for your support. It has been so critical to our success and continues to be critical to our success. So thank you very much for that support over the years.
And Lisa and Norma.
Yes, we appreciate Lisa and Norma too. And thank you all. I look forward to many years going forward of productive partnership with TC3. So thank you all. And I guess we're ready to move on. And I see JR is here. So we will double back to Veteran Services, and that can be found on page 4-212 of your budget book.
And we'll say goodbye.
Hey, goodbye. Good night. Thanks, everybody.
Good night. Four dash one.
212.
Thank you.
Good evening, JR.
Good evening. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Excuse me running behind. It's single parent week this week, so
Yeah.
a lot of things happening. Thank you. I guess I think everybody knows me, but just in case, I'm JR Claiborne. I'm the Director for Veteran Services for Tompkins County. And I'm here to talk about my budget for this week for fiscal year 2023. So our mission, as you'll see, is to connect local veterans of the United States Armed Forces and their families with federal, state, and local resources. And this is done through a combination of referral, counseling, and direct assistance to help veterans find their eligibility. And the range of benefits include assisting claims for compensation and pension, assisting with applying for VA healthcare, burial benefits and markers, obtaining military records on the federal level. On the state level, we have benefits including applying for the blind annuity, the Fry Scholarship, and discharge upgrade process. And our local, for our local benefits, we have a few, including property tax exemptions, filing for military records, employment services, getting driver's license status put on your driver's license. And also our return to favor program, which both are administered through our county clerk's office, which return to favor program grants veterans who sign up for it a county issued ID. And when they go to places, our veterans go to places that say that they entertain veterans discount, instead of them having to pull out their discharge papers or something, they can pull out their county issued ID. Oh, and also, forgot, I maintain a listserv. Actually, myself and Dominic also has started a listserv for veterans, but I have one where I just crossed 200 last week.
Excellent.
I've got about 200 people on my listserv, and these are all vets. They're primarily veterans, but also family members and veteran service providers around Tompkins County. There, can you go back? Yes. To make sure, wait, that looked different. Okay. So for our benefits and impacts, wow, that looks a lot smaller up there. I've listed a lot of the, well, not a lot, just a snapshot of the external partnerships that I've been able to develop since starting the department. And this is what allows me to be able to be in support of our veterans services, our veterans, our military, and their families. As you see, each of these listed, as well as those that aren't, are strategic in ways that we help keep providing programming for our veterans. We also look at providing services, direct service to them, as well as supporting some of their programs as well. Under drivers, I just want to note that good relationships and good results equal more demand for more service. So as someone I heard once say, no good thing goes unpunished. In that way, it's not really punishment. It's actually a service that I'm very proud and honored to be able to provide for our veterans community. But what it has done is gone from day one when I open the office, literally when I put my key in the door, someone comes behind me like, hey, are you the veteran service guy? I've got something for you. To today where the phone rings, people come in, I'm in and out of meetings. So it's quite a few things happening. So more demands for more service. Also, excuse me, I definitely want to say that, sorry, I want to make sure I didn't pass something there. I just passed my 3rd anniversary, or me and my department just passed our 3rd anniversary at the end of July. So time has gone fast and a lot of things have happened, but I've been very appreciative of the various collaborations with many of the departments across the county, as well as organizations within and around the county in order to help serve our constituency. And regarding the range of veterans there, I mentioned veterans from Vietnam War to GWOT, which is the Global War on Terror, which is still basically from the First Persian Gulf War up through today. A lot of these vets are dealing with the ill effects of Agent Orange, primarily with the Vietnam era vets, to our local vets who are, our more recent veterans who are dealing with ill effects of burn pits and other things associated with having been deployed. And, oh, and I'm sorry, you'd have to move, but one thing I noted on there was MST. So if I have too much alphabet soup, please stop me. But MST is for military sexual trauma. This is something that's really been a lot of push to have uncovered and try to rectify for a lot of people. This was primarily pushed from Senator Gillibrand. Sheesh, probably 5, 6, 7 years ago. I know she did this for solo for quite a while. And what that has resulted in is a lot of people coming forward to try and deal with years. A lot of people, I mean, you're talking about 10, 20 years worth of things that have been suppressed, and they're trying to deal with it now, which includes trying to even speak to what happened to them and put it down on paper so that they can submit that claim. So for our deployment 23, there's new developments that are on horizon for this next year. Actually, I'm kind of excited about the new administrative tools. This is something that I'm working in conjunction with the county clerk's office and ITS, Katie Prince, trying to really beef up a intake form that can also act as an activities form and a statistics counter. So being able to, my hope is that I'll be able to run a report at the end of that and be able to spit out statistics of everything that I've done, that my department has done. Also, the PACT Act and Camp Lejeune. Anybody who has a radio or TV or on the internet probably has seen Camp Lejeune at least once a day, if not more often. And that's resulted in starting to get calls. I've only had a few so far, but I've had a few side conversations when I've gone out in the community. There are people who are starting to call in to ask more questions about that, primarily to know what it is that they can do or should they do, and how not to have to be involved with paying a lawyer, excuse me, Mike, but having to pay a lawyer, enrich oodles of money when for something that is hopefully going to be decided in favor of our veterans and their families. Also, new relationships are going to include the Binghamton Veterans Center, trying to be able to bring their counseling services to at least periodic visits here for our veterans that might be under their care, so that instead of having to go to Binghamton, they can actually come here locally. And the other two things there, the ETS sponsorship and Dwyer program, these are things that are on the horizon for next year. ETS sponsorship is, I liken it to Big Brother, Big Sisters for the military. And you'll be hearing more about that, but basically we're looking for people who would like to be sponsors. Basically sponsors or trained mentors to veterans, newly separating active military members, meaning those who are within their last year of service and those who are in their first year of separation. And the idea is to be able to give them a relationship locally, so that if somebody, Joe Navy gets out and says, I'm coming back to Tompkins County, we can connect him or her with, Joe or Jane Navy, we can connect them with a sponsor here locally who will be able to help them answer questions. Where's a good place to live? What's the job outlook like? Where are the good schools? I've got family with me. Where can I put them? Things like that. And the idea is to be able to help them hit the job running. This was started by a couple of, I think they were both a lieutenant colonel and colonel out of Fort Drum, who really looked at how is it that they can bring a program together that helps veterans in transition out of the military, the way that they help current service members move from post to post, so that they can hit the ground running. We do the same thing for ours. And the bigger goal of that is to help avoid what's called the cliff, where we're losing our veterans at a rate of 22 a day. And it's the hope that building those relationships will help prevent them from that or steer them away from it. Similar with the Dwyer program, that is something that I'm working on now to try and bring in the next year. And with that, we'll be able to, the idea is to have also a program that is for the benefit of the veteran. It's very loose, it's very flexible, but the idea is that to provide activities and services to avail that will help a veteran and their family or military service member be able to survive and thrive in our community and not get lost. And then lastly, the recognition and capabilities. Their crew is needed for anticipated expansion. In short, I'd like to think I can do everything. I'd like to think I can take on everything, but one of the things I've learned about leadership is to recognize when you're at your limit and you need to ask for help. And in that point, I noticed in your visit with my other fellow single person department that there were questions asked of him as he's trying to make sure work gets done by himself. And I know he's got a lot and I can relate. But I'm at a point here where I'm comfortable with saying that I need help, because when I say help, meaning additional staffing, because I see how much more that I can do with this department. I see the things that some of the missed phone calls, some of the missed visits, some of the people that I need to get back to, in addition to the people who need continual care as we try to progress through the claims process with them. I also see some of the things that can be done in the community that I would love to be able to do. And I have to, like I said, I admit, I can almost do 1.5. I've almost gotten close to being in 2 places at once, but that's pretty much my limit. So I think with the help of having another person in the office, another veteran service officer, in the office, that we will be able to provide more service to our community, which will include processing more claims for our community, which in turn brings tax-free money into the community. So there's a big benefit all the way around for being able to expand my services. And so with that, you see my current budget reflects both my office includes my position, a part-time information aide that I'm still trying to find, and also that the revenues include a bump in state funding. Up until this year, we've received $10,000 a year from the state veteran service agencies across the state in support of what we do, and they gave us another 15 this year. So now we have 25,000 per year going forward. And that's, to my knowledge, that's permanent unless something else happens in Albany. And so as you see that right now, I've got 1.12 people, but right now it's still me. And with the addition of a new person there, we'll have 1.5 full-time. And that extra person, again, that is the amount that includes the salary plus bringing them up to speed with equipment and everything for the expansion of staff. For the memorials budgets, I like this budget because there's not a lot of stress that goes with it. This is basically the budget that handles our memorial things for our veterans, and that is primarily the, let me not say this wrong. It handles primarily the Flag Day, supports the Veterans Parade. Hopefully that'll be getting back on track again. It won't be this year, but that I'm told, but hopefully going forward, as well as the flags that you see each year in the cemeteries during Memorial Day that mark veterans flags across the county. And this is what that supports. That's the next one. And for the over target request for this, I'm just asking for additional $500 to go with that fund. And the concern with that mainly is that I had to order more flags this year. And in addition to more flags, the prices went up. As you see, all the prices are going up everywhere. And what I'm told is we're probably going to have the same kind of increase next year. And this is despite shopping around, trying to price shop. Right now, my current vendor is out of Rochester, so been fortunate to at least be able to keep someone within the region instead of having to go out of state. And that is everything. All right.
Thank you, JR.
Thank you.
Before we take questions, I just want to say it's so gratifying to see what you've done with this new department. I remember when we actually decided it was time we had a Veterans Services Department. Thanks to Mike Lane's consistent advocacy for that. And we were trying to figure out who was going to head it up. And you obviously are the right person for the job. And we're really pleased that you're with us.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
You're welcome. Does anybody have any questions? Lisa, yeah.
I just wanted to point out that the second part of JR's presentation, the memorial celebrations budget, is a separate budget item, and it's on section 4, page 138.
Actually, thank you for saying that, Lisa. I forgot to mention that has, up until my department was established, that was a separate budget. I believe it was with the legislature, well, with your office. And I think the first couple of years I kind of helped manage it, but this is my first year where it's been brought under my office. So thank you for both of you helping me with that.
I think Shauna has a question and then Mike Lane.
Yeah, I am looking at the budget book under section 4, page 213, and it has 2.5 employees listed for 2023 recommended. And I just wanted to see if that was accurate or if we're going to be at 1.5. It has Director of Veteran Services, Information Aid as half, and then Veterans Services Officer is 1.
Yeah, no, you're right. That is correct.
Okay, so we'll be going up
Not
to
quite that.
2.5.
Yes.
Okay,
Sorry.
From
Okay.
1.5.
One was in front of here. Yes,
okay,
that is true.
okay.
Correct?
We're going to 2.5 staff persons?
Yes,
So
Yes.
the one full-time staff is an OTR. It's a targeted recommended OTR.
Yeah, I thought that was for a half-time position.
Now, that position exists right now. It's just not filled. And
Position
then,
was approved for 2022.
Oh, got it. Okay. Sorry, thank you.
So I guess we had half a position for 2022 that wasn't filled, and now we're going to try to fill a full-time position, which might make it easier to find someone to take the position. Is that true?
and those are two different positions though.
Okay. All right. I think Veronica had a question.
Yeah, I guess kind of on the same, I still don't quite understand. So the Veteran Service Officer is going to be a full-time position?
Correct.
Okay, even though on page 215 of the budget book, it says Veteran Service Officer, a part-time position?
It's going to be at 30 hours. So
Okay.
by county standards, it's full-time, but it's not a 40-hour position.
Okay, thank you. That makes
Oh,
sense.
Okay.
But it's going to cost what it's going to cost. I guess it doesn't matter how we categorize it. Okay, I have Annie and then Randy.
Thank you.
Oh, I'm sorry, Mike. I'm sorry, Mike
Take
was,
them.
okay.
It's fine.
So a couple of questions. First, I want to start off with just a clarification on how did you come up with 30 hours a week for that position versus 35 or 40?
Trying to be conservative of my needs. Actually, it is, let's say this correctly. It is 30 hours. I have 5 hours for overage because I know that this position is going to require a lot of work, and just trying to be able to maintain their time, but knowing that I'm going to need them to go overtime on occasion. But the idea is just trying to be conservative of what I need compared to what the county's needs are.
Okay, thank you. And then next question, you said regarding, I can't remember the name of the program, but regarding, it sounded like sexual abuse that members had experienced while they were in service. And you said something about some type of rectification program. So I'm just wondering if you can clarify that a little bit.
Sure, that's not a new program. The MST is part of a focus of the VA and trying to help veterans deal with the various things that they'll be filing claims for compensation for. So it's basically, it's not new, but it's new in that there's more advocacy, there's more attention to it. Way prior to me, there are people who had a lot of cases where they've come to the VA claiming that they've been sexually assaulted or otherwise had trauma dealing with a sexual assault. And it was either ignored, pushed under the rug. Think back to Tailhook. If that rings a bell, that was, I think in the 80s. So I was just getting to the Navy then. But things like that, and coming to today where there's more attention to them, there's more of the burden of proof does not fall as hard on the veteran as it did back in prior days. But that's not a new program. That's just a new attention in the last few years.
Okay, so it's to help them file claims. I just was wondering why you used the word rectify. But if you don't remember, then that's okay.
Yeah, basically just trying to get away from the past of ignoring it or
Okay, so-
denying claims and ignoring the effect of what happened to
So to
people.
rectify how we deal with the claims then.
Correct.
Sound like,
That's how I
okay,
understand it. Yes.
thanks. And then the last one, you said veterans IDs. So that's a county ID. It's not something like, say, added on to their driver's license. It's a separate ID.
Yes, there's two things there. One is a veteran through DMV can get their veteran status put onto their license.
Okay,
It goes on to the upper left corner of your license, provided that you take your DD-214, your discharge documents to the DMV. But the clerk's office also has something where, particularly for veterans who bring their discharge documents into the clerk's office to have it scanned into their system. And the benefit of that is if anything ever happens, it gets lost, a dog ate it, it gets lost, or whatever happens, gets ruined, they can call the clerk's office and they'll be able to get a certified copy.
Wow, that's
And
great.
in addition to that, while they're there doing that, the clerk staff will ask them if they would like to be part of the Return to Favor program. And part of that is they get their picture taken and it gets put on an ID that the clerk's office produces. And then they can take that around wherever they go. So instead of their having to carry their discharge documents or some other, like some people carry their past military ID, some people actually do fold up their DD-214 and keep it with them.
Right.
This avoids all of that and just lets them produce this card.
So I like that. So it could either be a separate ID or something added to their driver's license. So that's a great program. Thank you.
Okay, I've got Mike, Randy, Greg, Shauna, bearing in mind we are now 12 minutes over schedule. No, it isn't.
I just wanted to clarify a couple of things. One is that I'm not a TV lawyer, so I don't handle any Camp Lejeune things. The other thing I wanted to clarify is that for many, many years, we didn't have a Veterans Service Department. And the reason we didn't was because the New York State Veterans Service Officer had an office in Tompkins County and handled these items and supported our veterans locally. One of them either retired or left at the end. And when we didn't have that state Veterans Service Officer, the state started calling up our county administrator saying, you have to have a Veterans Service Officer. It's a state mandate. And I have to say that I wasn't happy about that because we were providing veterans services through the state. I know Lisa took a look at that and see if we could push back on it. But when it was clear we couldn't and we needed to go forward and establish this department, I was glad we did. And we certainly have a great director at this point. But I just want to point out that what's happening is this budget is going to double over about 3 years or nearly. And it is a state mandate that we have. But our veterans are so important to us that we have to do this.
Thanks, Mike. It's good to be reminded how we got where we are. Okay, Randy.
Thank you. Thanks, John. Good service you're providing. The documentation and having it scanned for your discharge papers is very valuable. I know somebody dealing with that right now. They can't find theirs, and so that's and it's actually a wife of somebody. So I may have her reach out to you. So
please do.
A question is the VFW closed in Ithaca or is it still open?
Yes, to my knowledge, it's still open.
Okay,
Yes.
I just never see any
I
cars
get
there.
referrals from them from time to time. Usually I think folks go in the side door as opposed to the front door, but yeah, they're still open.
Okay, good, thanks.
Greg?
Yeah, thanks. I appreciate the presentation. Yeah, you had mentioned that you're putting in some software or program that would allow you to track interactions with veterans, or you currently have that in place?
No, that's something I'm working on with ITS, Katie Prince primarily.
Okay.
And we're building on something that I'd worked with Alana Congdon in the clerk's office to do. And basically this is going to improve things that I have. Right now I have everything recorded, but it's in a Word document and there's no way to extract it out of there easily.
Sure.
I could go through there and one at a time try to find things, but I also have veterans that might be, one claim might be spread over 3 or 4 months or more. Because of just the various back and forth that need for getting materials, getting documents, doctor's visits, whichever.
Yeah. So another question, do you know how many veterans we have in Tompkins County?
Right now, the last count I saw is 4,100.
Okay. And then, as we look always to add more staff, right, we look at how we can either reach more people or increase the services that we provide to the existing people using them, right?
Yes.
So I would just, say I'd be curious to know as you go forward with the new staff person or whatever the additional staff is, just sort of tracking and knowing how many more people we're able to serve or how many more interactions we're able to have, just for, for future years as we talk about. That's helpful information, I think, for me and hopefully others. But it sounds like there's still a lot of work to be done. It's a big number of veterans in the community.
It is. It's a lot of people serve, and between them and their families, especially when we have spouses who, we say differently, if we have widows or widowers, that means that relationship extends. If they come in and apply for benefits, if they're eligible, the relationship doesn't end with the veteran. At that point, it extends through the family.
Awesome. Thank you.
Shauna.
Yeah, I was just wondering, since the position did not get filled in 2022, and I'm fully support of your office, would it make sense to actually hire one full-time person this year and then to see what the impact and the workload would be for next year? Because it seems like you haven't really been fully staffed with even the half a person that you requested from this time last year.
I would love to say yes, but the nature of the work primarily this year is that it's been at such a pace that I've not really been able to take advantage of a time to to actually do a hiring process. Additionally, I was looking for a veteran. I had the positions veteran preferred, I think is what we put in the application, and I had none come forward. There were a few that I had identified that I thought would, but for various reasons, including the money that we were offering, they did not. And so I'm still hopeful, but there's two different job sets, two different skill sets that will be deployed with these two positions.
Okay, thank you.
And actually, to go back, I think, to Annie's question earlier, the other reason for the 30 hours was figuring that I have some overlap between those two positions that I can work. That way I can have the office covered all day, regardless of if I'm there or I'm out at a different function. Right now, if I'm away at a training or I'm out at a meeting, I'm out at an activity, there's no one in the office. So that's trying to, like I said, trying to be conservative and look for ways that can actually cover the office, avail services for our veterans and still be able to not ask for everything yet. I might come back one of these days, but right now, just trying to be conservative in my ask.
Annie, last question.
Office space for 2.5 people?
We've worked out with something with COFA where we've got a couple of places identified. Right now, we're waiting to actually fix the front desk to accommodate the new position. So that's the other thing that kind of held up a little bit, because my idea was to be able to have the person come in and have a workstation for them, but that's not happening right now. So we've been told that along with everything else, there's a big delay in supplies. So once we get our plans approved, there's still going to be a delay in that. So yes, so right now it's not ideal. I'm going to have folks right now that what we're looking at is moving some folks around, including my office, to try and put at least some of us together, but the new position will most likely be in a different part of the building.
The other Veteran Services office
where we are
officer
now.
will also have another office. Okay, thank you.
All right. Thank you, everyone. And thank you, JR.
Thank
Keep up
you.
the good work.
Appreciate it. And thank you everyone for your time.
Thank you.
And
Okay.
please reach me anytime.
So we have, next up, we have the Office for the Aging. Let's see, and I see that they are online. You can find their presentation on page 4-46 of your budget book.
Hi.
Hi.
How you doing? I just wanted to thank you for having us tonight, and I wanted to introduce, I've got a couple staff here with me, Karen Bullis, our Deputy Director, and Bob Slocum, our Fiscal Coordinator. We're going to share the screen now. Hopefully you can see that. Can you see?
Well, it says you're trying.
Oh, really?
There it is.
Okay, perfect. There's a little delay, it appears. Okay, you can. So yeah, again, the Office for the Aging, we're really the point of entry into aging services in Tompkins County. We provide unbiased information, assistance, and referrals to a wide variety of cost-effective home and community-based services that address health disparities in aging and promote equitable and healthy aging for older adults. You can see from the slide that we will be continuing this. All of our current programs are supported by this budget in 2023. We have 28 different programs that we administer. We have 26 contracts, 10 subcontractors, and 22 different funding streams. So some of the influences, and I just kind of highlighted some of the major things that are happening right now in the aging world. And there's a caregiver crisis. I think we've talked about that at HHS before. But strengthening our informal caregiver resources and supports is something that we focused on this past year and will continue to. At this point, we have a strong and consistently attended caregiver support group. We talked about the HHA shortage, the home health aid shortage. So we did hire someone in November of 2021, and we began to directly provide aid services out of our office. We've learned and we've adapted since the inception of that. And I'll talk about that a little bit more later. We also have had a grant for our respite program for caregivers, which it ended this year. We just actually applied for another one to extend it and expand it today. We put that grant in, so hopefully we're going to get that. We're also working with the State Office for Aging on a few different pilots for social isolation. Always gets me. And caregiving pilots that will be supported in the 2023 budget. This funding was supported in the state fiscal budget through NYSOFA programs to address social isolation and expand caregiver supports. I'll just start at the bottom so I can explain some of these programs. So the one on the far left is a New York State Office for the Aging partnered with the Association on Aging and with the company called TrueAlta to create this web-based caregiver education and support platform. And it's available to any unpaid caregiver in New York State. And it really is meant to teach critical skills and reduce caregiver stress and increase one's confidence in their caregiving abilities. The next one over is our Joy for All Companion Pets program, which we've been doing that for a couple of years, but we're going to continue that. NYSOFA has sent us we just got a new shipment, I think the other day, with about 50 different animals. So we've got some to be able to give out. But these pets are really designed to bring comfort, companionship to older adults, helping to alleviate things like social isolation, loneliness, cognitive decline, and improve the quality of life. The next one is LEQ. This one's really new to us. It's the first ever proactive voice operated care companion. It's designed to empower and support the person in taking care of their well-being and in control. It's a kind of a little robot you can see in the picture. It has a laptop with it. It engages and interacts with the client. It's like a souped up Alexa or something, and it actually engages more with the client than the client engages with it. So it's a back and forth kind of thing. So we were sent 5 of these. We're getting them out to the community. It's a pilot. So hopefully we'll get some good feedback. And if the feedback is positive, we'll be able to, NYSOFA may support that and provide more to us. And the last new initiative is VSC, which is a virtual senior center. This is something NYSOFA is supporting also to help older adults connect virtually on this platform, engage through virtual and hybrid classes, and we'll be subcontracting this out to our local senior center Lifelong to run that program. So this pie chart represents our just our overall budget. I just broke it down to kind of make it a little easier to navigate through. I'll start with the yellow piece of the pie. That's our New York Connects program. Our New York Connects program is our no wrong door system. It's like a one-stop shop that provides free objective information, assistance, education, and options counseling or person-centered counseling for anybody over 18, not just people over 60, on long-term services and supports. So that's 10% of our budget, our overall budget. And you can see it's 91% state funded and 9% locally funded. The orange section are nutrition services. That's 59% federal and state funded and 41% locally funded, 33% of our overall budget. This all goes to FoodNet to provide home delivered meals, congregate meals, nutrition education, and nutrition counseling. And the blue section is our in-home care services. This piece is 22% of our overall budget, 66% federal state funded, 30% locally funded, and 4% other, which cost share contributions and other grants that we have. This is our case management. We also contract with home care agencies to provide aids. This is also where our directly provided home health aid comes out of this section too. And the green is everything else. It's 36% of our budget. It's all the other programs, which I didn't list or go into, but it's everything else that we provide through the office. Those 28 programs I mentioned before, part of that. 48% of our 48% federal and state funded, 45% local funded, and 7% other, which is interdepartmental cost shares and contributions. So this page is the recommended budget. I think you guys have all seen this before. You can see the changes on it, and you can also see our OTR that we're requesting, which I'll talk about more in a later slide. And our FTEs, full-time equivalents, there is a 0.5% change from the 2022 budget, bringing our FTEs up to 12.8, which is almost where we were pre-2020, when we were cut 12%. So we're getting close to back to where we were before. And finally, our over target request. I think, as I had mentioned earlier, since we started the home health aid program and directly providing it, we've found out a lot of things along the way. There's been some bumps and bumps, yeah, a lot of bumps that we've had to smooth out as we've navigated through this program. But one thing that we did find out is that we're doing a really good job serving the clients that are on our waiting list. And that was the intention of this effort. Many of the people that are on this waiting list have increasingly complex needs and are just requiring additional coordination, triaging of information between the home health aide, the case managers, and the appropriate services and supports that they need to keep them in their home safely. It's really, I mean, that's the biggest time taker at this point. It's not serving the client themselves. It's trying to get them the other things that they need when the aid isn't available. And often these people are on the waiting list because we are really their last resort. Those complex needs and situations have been difficult to address. A lot of them don't have any informal supports. Not many agencies will serve them, even if they had aids, because of the living situations they might be in, or the other problems that they're dealing with. So this OTR position really is converting a part-time information aide to a full-time long-term care specialist. The full-time position will not only support the HHA, but it will support our New York Connects line, which is at our front desk. That's the position that was cut originally in 2020. We were able to bring it on half-time this year with some CARES Act funding we had and some ARPA funding we had. But the long-term care specialist will be able to support the home health aid program and give those wraparound services and triage that information to our case managers. And they'll have, increasing the position to a different level, they'll have the skills that they need to be able to do that, because it's definitely more work than an info aid. But they're going to be doing two things for us. So hopefully they'll be able to provide those solutions and really serve our clients better. So, and that's really all I have. If anybody has questions.
Thank you, Lisa. Do we have questions for Lisa? Mike?
Well, we're talking about long-term care, and that's so important that we have assistance. And I know this is also through social services. In my legal practice, I hear from people every day who need long-term care for their relatives or for themselves. And when we explain to them that Medicare doesn't pay for that, expression that we see is like a deer in a headlight. They are just horrified when we tell them that you're expected to pay for long-term care for yourself, and it's over $12,000 a month now. And if you have anything, you're going to have to use that up before you can get the social service program of Medicaid. I tell people what we do is embarrass and humiliate our elderly and impoverish them. And the only reason I'm bringing this up now is I just wondered, are you hearing anything from the state level or for example, that they're looking at this, trying to figure out how to help people, or are they just, I know 20 years ago, they came up with the long-term care public-private partnership policies, but the cost of those have just gone up dramatically. So I'll stop with that, but I just wondering if you're hearing anything that might be a good news here.
Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to be able to bring good news or not, but I have heard a couple of things about some kind of revising of older programs that possibly could be coming forward, but I heard that they don't have much foothold at this point. But it would be through Medicare rather than Medicaid. The similar program that we had years ago through DSS was the Lombardi long-term care program. It was really, the intention was to keep people out of institutionalized care, but showing that we could reduce the costs and keep them in home better. But I mean, overall, that's really our mission. I mean, that is what all our programs for. We are trying to keep, use these community-based services and resources and programs to keep people in their homes as long as possible, because it's cost effective. We know that. We know that these things are going to be cheaper, in the long run than having to live in an institution. So, that's our goal every day, advocacy done at the state. Yeah, there's a lot of advocacy being done at the state on different levels, especially home health aid, fair pay, all those things are keeping people, helping keep them at home. So it's a patchwork quilt though. There's no magic bullet.
Yeah, it's catch-22. The home healthcare aides needed more money. They still need more money, but as soon as those costs went up, then the nursing home costs doubled.
You're right.
So there's unintended consequences even with the best intentions. Thank you for commenting.
I think the bottom line is that getting old sucks. That's just my perspective on the process, and I'm certainly intimately familiar with it. So we have Veronica, Annie, and Randy.
Thank you. And thank you, Lisa, and everyone for your presentation and the work you're doing managing a truly incredible number of programs. And I think the largest number of accounts I've seen in a budget book section so far.
Yeah.
About the home health aides, or the home health aide that you are employing, how much of your wait list, you said they're doing a good job of serving the wait list. Like, how are they helping everyone on the wait list, or how much?
Not everyone yet. There's about, on average, is about 25 people on our wait list, and the aide is serving anywhere from 12 to 15 people at this point. Some come on and go off. Some have problems that we can't put a client or an employee into their home safely before we address what's going on. So that's been a struggle to try to find ways to get their homes in order and clean and pest-free, and those things are important before we can send an aid in there. So again, like I said before, some of these people come to us last resort. Home care agencies won't serve them. So our intention is to serve everybody on the list at least 2 to 3 hours a week. That's really what our goal is. If not every other week. Some don't need every week. Some people need different things. So it just depends on their level of need.
Sure. Do you feel like having more hours for the home health aide or another one would help serve people more or better? Or is it more that they have other types of problems going on?
I think it would. I mean, we could bring more people into the program. You know, we try to not make our wait list too long that we can't manage it. And it just keeps growing with the lack of home care aides in the home care agencies. The intention was, to try to bring another person on. We really wanted to take this year to look and see how we could really manage the program most effectively. So still just going into a year into the program, I wanted to not hire somebody else until we really got a handle on it. But down the road, I think that it's definitely a huge possibility.
Okay, thanks. 2 more quick questions, if that's okay. Do you have any financial relationship with the Ithaca Guaranteed Income for Caregivers program?
Don't think so. No.
All right, never mind that. And the last one is maybe more of a budget structure question. You mentioned the New York Connects program and that you're still doing that. And I see this account called New York Connect that has just full of zeros. Explain that.
Yeah, sure. That's just sometimes lines are named a certain name at one point, and the program changes to a different name, and it doesn't get changed in the budget tracking system. And it's just one of those things. Now, where does New York Connects fall now? I think it's under BIP.
Yeah.
Balancing Incentives Program.
97.
New York Connect started out kind of disjointed in different accounts. So now it's fallen into this balancing incentive program. So it's just ignore the other one that should be really taken out, but it hasn't been.
Yeah, maybe we can take that out next year so we could maybe save it 3.
That would be great. I'd love that.
Okay.
Great. That's all. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Veronica. Okay, I've got Annie and Randy.
Thank you.
Oh, Randy doesn't have anything. Annie.
Thank you. I have a rhetorical question that could either be for the Office for the Aging or for our next presenter, Jim Boudreau from SPCA, or for our chair, Deborah Dawson. But since we have the Office for the Aging and the SPCA, just wondering why we don't have kittens or puppies here, or at least a robotic puppy or cat from the Office for the Aging.
I should have brought one over to you. We could have brought an LQ over and she would talk the whole time. So that would be great too. Next time I'll remember, Annie.
Okay. Or our next budget meeting, the 26th would be good too. So thank you.
Word to the wise, everyone. If you want Annie's vote, put a kitten in your presentation.
Or on my desk.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Lisa.
Thank you. Here's our cats and dogs. They just were delivered for us. So. Thank you.
I think you can enjoy the rest of your evening. Thanks
Awesome.
very much.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, moving on to Animal Control SPCA. That presentation's on page 5-2 of your budget book. And who is here from the SPCA?
It's me. It's Jim
there
Boudreau.
you are. Hi,
Here
Jim.
I am. It's Jim Boudreau, Executive Director.
Okay, take it away.
And
You
I think
have
Annie
plenty of
knows.
kittens.
Yeah, I think Annie knows quite well that kittens don't necessarily travel well. But we get to see pictures of Buttercup all the time, so it seems like we're pretty good on cats.
Buttercup
Thanks
is
for
an
the shout out.
exceptional cat.
Yes. All right, let me try and share this real quick. I don't know. Is that working?
Yeah, we can see it. It's kind of dark though.
There we go.
There we go.
There we go. Okay. So the program basically, and I do appreciate this new format. It was very nice to work with. It really brought forward the questions I think that we're trying to get across here. So thank you for rolling that out. But basically the program is doing two things. We're trying to control the unwanted pet population. And there's some statistics here about that. In the last 10 years, we have spayed or neutered over 19,000 animals. 2021 broke down to about 358 dogs and 1,764 cats. I always put in the feral and free roaming work that we do, or what I'll refer to later as the trap, neuter, release, or TNR work, mostly because those are typically viewed as community cats that nobody can really adopt necessarily because they have not had a lot of human contact. So they're sort of what some people also might refer to as sort of wild cats. And they are also a demographic of animals that people don't necessarily want to take responsibility for. So we do that work. We work with residents. Again, a lot of it is in our rural community, but that doesn't mean that we don't get a few feral cat population issues in some of the more higher density population areas in Tompkins County. We certainly do. But, people could, theoretically, we've worked with people who have, 10, 15, 20 on their property. And again, the financial barrier to providing care for all of those animals is very difficult, which is why we do them. And again, mostly to stop the population from continuing to multiply in those areas. Typically, a feral cat colony is pretty stable. They're living fine where they are, and having a stable colony really works. A lot of times people do want us to remove them. Oftentimes by removing them, you'll have new ones move in. So we just, again, are working with these residents on all of these trap, neuter, release programs and that we do tend to be very specific case by case basis. None of them are really the same. And also at the same time, we are providing rabies vaccinations to stop the spread of rabies. And we administered 1,692 of those in 2021. And obviously that's New York State mandated to reduce the incident and spread of the virus. So we basically provide a weekly spay and neuter clinic. They're booked in advance by appointment. They're on an income dependent sliding scale. So residents could pay as little as $5 for a surgery and vaccine, up to anyone can use the clinic. So if you aren't income qualified for a subsidy or a lower cost, the top cost would be about $125. And that's typically for a female dog. Which is the highest price point for a spay and neuter surgery. Compared to a local veterinarian, that might be $300-400. Obviously, this is very appealing to a lot of people. And it's a high quality, high volume clinic. So the veterinarians working in those clinics are basically specialists in spay and neuter. So there's very few complications. It's a very high quality clinic. They do about 30 to 35, every Tuesday. So it does get done pretty quickly, which is why we can do the volume that we do every year. And again, we work with local property owners to initiate these trap, neuter, release programs. And we do provide that at no cost to residents. We do, however, ask, obviously there's going to be some times of the year that it's not possible. I mean, if you're trapping an outdoor feral cat, we want it to be in some ways weather dependent. We don't want to do it in temperatures, either extreme heat or extreme cold, that are going to put that animal at risk being trapped in a trap for an extended period of time. But we do oftentimes in these situations need the help and the partnership of the resident, the property owner, the landlord, whoever they might be, to help us to do this, to monitor the traps, to inform us when we have captured an animal that needs spay and neuter surgery, et cetera. So we look at our numbers over time, constantly. Statistics are important to us. And like I said, we don't track the incidence of rabies in our community. I think the health department can probably give you information on that. But we definitely track the number of animals coming into the shelter. And you can see a pretty nice steady decline over time due to the spay and neuter program at the SPCA. We went from in 2010, 2009, 2010 to from spaying and neutering about 1,200 animals to, 12, 13, 14, about 2,000 animals a year. We do have lower numbers, certainly in 2020 and 2021. We did in the beginning of the pandemic, especially in 2020, had to suspend the clinics multiple times. So our spay and neuter numbers were down. But the other thing I want to point out here in this graph is 2020 as sort of an anomaly. You can see that the SPCA took in, a considerable less number of animals in that year. Most of that really had to do with the fact, again, as a community-based organization that relies on the help of the community, most of the kittens that we see every year and most of the stray cats obviously are brought to us by concerned community members who see them in their neighborhood or find them on their property, find the litter of kittens, find the stray cat. In 2020, people were just not as concerned about that they had been in the past. So that's sort of why the drop in numbers was mostly related to strays and kitten litters. Owner surrender animals, which are animals that would be given up for rehoming, those numbers remained pretty consistent. But it was just that idea that, people were concerned about their health and their welfare. A stray cat or a litter of kittens was not necessarily their top priority. It rebounded, as you can see, back in 2021. And this year we're seeing roughly the same numbers as 2019, 2021. We're not through the year yet, obviously, but it's trending very similarly to the way it has in year past. So I just wanted to point out that 2020 is sort of a bit of an anomaly, and you've all seen this page before. And that is my short presentation.
Thank you. We call that crisp, Jim.
Thank you.
And we appreciate crisp. I see a question from Randy.
Yes, thank you, Jim. I wasn't aware of the TNR program, so it was good to learn that.
Absolutely.
All other municipalities pay a portion as well for this. What's the total budget?
Around $217,000. And the municipalities, just to clarify, the county budget dollars that we're talking about tonight are going to help subsidize the spay and neuter program. The dollars that the municipalities individually pay, that is only for stray dog control, technically. That's for what is considered animal control. And it only covers stray dogs. It's basically just your more olden times dog catcher stuff, finding the stray, bringing them into the shelter, that we contract with the municipalities to do that. If those animals become ours, obviously, then we would spay and neuter them and put them up for adoption if they're unclaimed. But they are two separate areas.
One of the issues or concerns I hear from people or dogs that come on their property and may be a threat to them or their animals, but then they go back home. So when they call animal control, the animals aren't still on their property. So what do you suggest those people do?
I think that they should. I think if they have a neighbor who has a nuisance animal, they should contact animal control. And we get hundreds of these calls, as you can imagine, every year. We always go out to the property, where the animal has come from, if we know where that is, if the person is willing to give us that information, which they generally are. A lot of times people aren't necessarily willing to file a formal complaint because not containing your animal is a finable offense in most municipalities. So we can issue a ticket for that. The one thing that I will say, well, two things. One, again, going back to the idea that a lot of times, they just want the problem resolved. They don't necessarily want it to be punitive to the person. I mean, certainly we've had situations where it has happened multiple times over and over again by the same animal. And that's when, neighbors then sort of decide, okay, enough is enough. I need to have something punitive happen here. We're never going to fix the problem. We do run into some problems where local municipalities or local judges don't necessarily, it's not serious enough for them to sort of want to make an issue of it. So it's generally resolved, between the neighbors. We have, in certain severe situations, we have offered to provide some materials for better fencing. We can't build those things for them, obviously, but we had a pretty severe situation last year, which was a multiple offender where we did help facilitate the restructuring of a fence. But yeah, it is unfortunate, but I do think that if people are bothered by it and it is a nuisance, they should definitely contact us, and we will send one of our officers out there to have a conversation, at least to start with the other property owner. And then if it's a repetitive thing, we have to look at how we can resolve it long-term.
Thank you.
Okay, anybody else? Okay, it looks like you're free to enjoy your evening, Jim. Thank you so much for coming and informing us as to your good work.
Thank you. My pleasure. Have a great night.
You too. Okay, our next presenter is from the Tompkins County Public Library. You can find that material on page 5-38 of your budget book. And let's see who's here. Teresa?
Hey everyone. I'm going to share the screen, so just give me a second.
Okay.
Okay, everyone can see it?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, great. First of all, I want to thank you for the opportunity to meet with you tonight, and thank you for your dedication to serving our community. I'd also like to do a big thank you to the trustees, the library staff, the community, the Friends of the Library, and the foundation for supporting us tonight. My name is Teresa Vatican, and I'm currently the acting director of Tompkins County Public Library. And actually tomorrow will be 1 year. So I've been in the role for about a year, and the director search is still continuing. So we're in the midst of it right now. So thank you very much. And I'm going to thank you again for your support in 2022. This was vital support for the library's Sunday hours. In 2022, we finally reopened on Sundays in the spring. We had about 8 total Sundays in the spring, and 2,200 visitors came in through the doors, and about 2,800 items circulated, which is wonderful. Sundays are such a vital opportunity for students, working parents, and families to visit the library. In fact, we got like a comment from a patron that said, we wish Sundays were open every week. We love to take our children in. We're working parents. It's very convenient. So I think they're really crucial. This year, the library also co-sponsored ballet and books, and it's a partnership with Southside Community Center, where you can do a little ballet for the kids, as you can see in the picture, with some books. What a great combination. Sundays also allowed the library to offer family programs and give us an additional day to offer events for the community. The library will offer, we actually started last week on September 18th, and we will have 9 total Sundays in the fall. And I know people love them, so they like to come in the doors. We also thank you for rebuilding the staff in 2022. Your support helped us go to 40 FTEs from 36.9. This was really crucial as we fully reopened the library, which we have been for a while, but a lot of our services also changed over due to COVID, where we actually offer curbside pickup now, or we offer binge bundles. We also brought back like books by mail, which I'll be talking about next. So I think it's really important to have the extra staff to help us in all the critical services that we provide for the community. We also are providing our traditional services such as collections, reference, programming, and community meeting space. I want to talk a little bit about library services today. We are redefining a new normal. During the pandemic, the library had to continually pivot and reimagine services. In redefining our new normal, the library is focusing on how the pandemic has altered library services. Since February of 2022, in that top picture on the left, we have distributed around 13,700 test kits, 24,000 KN95 masks, and about 7,000 youth masks. We started it outside originally, but now we've moved it inside. People are still taking the supplies, and they're so thankful when they pick them up. So we thank you for including us in this initiative. I feel it's very important for public health, and the patrons really smile when they come pick them up. We've also been able to retain our popular curbside pickup, which is now on Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays. And people are constantly saying thank you. I know it's great for families with young children, as well as people with mobility issues, people that have a hard time parking. So I know it's very popular. Due to COVID, we also noticed that ebooks and e-audiobooks became more popular. So we definitely have allocated more funding to make those collections available. Programming too has expanded, and now we offer outdoor, virtual, hybrid, and in-person programs. So we're pretty much doing more programming, but the outdoor programming is really popular, and we'll actually have kids outdoor programs this fall for the babies and the families story times. This year, the library saw the return of Library by Mail. It was formerly known as Books by Mail. This service allows patrons to have any material mailed to their home, and they are provided with a return envelope to return the material. This service has been popular for homebound patrons, as well as people with concerns about COVID or those that are immunocompromised. Book bundles we started during COVID as well. That's where a patron can say, I'm really interested in truck books for my children, and they can come in and pick them up in a bag. We have a librarian that will select the books, tailor to your interest, and then they can come pick them up, or they can be dropped off curbside. Another thing that really happened with COVID, it exposed the digital divide. For adults, the library has focused on digital literacy for all ages, including seniors. The Library of Things, which is our untraditional kind of library collection, it has museum passes, state park passes. We now have Wi-Fi hotspots that people can check out. And so those that are unable to use their internet at home can bring a Wi-Fi hotspot that they can borrow from the library and get the internet access at home. The other thing the library is really focusing on now is outreach, as well as maintaining and building new partnerships. The library wants to meet community members where they are. Just as the community belongs in the library belongs in the community. Children's outreach has included stories and crafts at GIAC, Chinese story time at Hasbrook, and sensory story time at downtown Ithaca Child Care Center. During the height of COVID, it was nearly impossible to restart the literacy sessions at the Tompkins County Jail. But due to some upgrades in the jail's technology, the team is now able to Zoom. We also received a humanities grant from ALA, which allowed us to purchase Chromebooks, playaways, and other equipment for the county jail. This summer, for the adult services, the library partnered with Cornell Botanical Garden and Ithaca City Cemetery to offer walking tours for adults. And we had about 20 adults come to each of the walking sessions, which was great because we had tried walking tours a few years ago and it wasn't as popular, but I think due to COVID, they became more popular. We have also added more focus to safety and security. The Safety and Security Committee has been working on trainings for staff. A priority for the library is to keep our patrons and staff safe. With an uptick in incidents in and around the library, we've had to improve and review our current practices. So you all know this slide. This slide shows our total request for 2023 and the recommended budget for Tompkins County funding with a total increase of 12%. To give you a full picture of our 2023 projected revenues for TCPL, this slide shows you our total budget of $4.7 million. It includes county, state, town, city, Friends of the Library, and the TCPL Foundation. Here are the projected revenues for 2023 displayed in the chart. As you can see, Tompkins County support translates to 85% of our revenue, and the remaining 15% comes from a variety of sources. So thank you. Tompkins County support ensures that the library meets the needs of our community. As you see here, other revenues, including the Friends of the Library and the Tompkins County Public Library Foundation, help. And I want to do a thank you to the Friends for operating their book sale and supporting our collection. I know they did it during COVID. They made it very successful and it's been wonderful. I've actually volunteered there and I really enjoyed it. And I want to thank the foundation for their fundraising and donor relations for additional funding for collections and programming. This slide shows the projected 2023 projected expenses with salary and benefits comprising a large portion of these. Total expenses are around 4.7 million. Salary and benefits added together are 3.69 million, exemplifying that the bulk of our spending is in salary and benefits. As you can see from the chart, salary and benefits are approximately 78% of our total budget. TCBL staff are our most essential investment. They are on the front lines working with the community and providing services. They are resilient, they are creative, and I'd like to thank them personally. As you can see, your support of the library is crucial. Due to the expansion of services, prioritizing outreach and focusing on safety for patrons and staff, this year we have 2 over target requests: improved security services and staff restoration and support. To return to fully normalized operations, including expanding outreach, we are requesting funding for staff restoration. The library requests an ongoing increase in its fiscal target to maintain a safe and welcoming environment for library patrons and the staff by improving security services. In the fall of 2021, we investigated other security options due to sustained periods without guards available, lack of adequate training, and increasing instances of incidents that required more professional handling. The new contracted services have proven to be dependable, well-trained, and has helped to establish more consistent expectations of behavior. The library is also requesting staff restoration and support. This will assist the library in being able to offer more outreach and meet the community where they are. Outreach is a way for libraries to promote their services, demonstrate value by engaging stakeholders, strengthen partnerships, and show their usefulness and relevance in the community. The most important part of our library is the staff and how they connect patrons with the community and information. Libraries listen to what the community needs and respond. As you can see, this FTE chart was reduced to staffing. We reduced staffing substantially to 36.9 FTEs during the start of COVID in response to funding reductions. Pre-COVID, the library was holding steady at approximately 43.1. In order to meet our current operational requirements, as well as extend the library's outreach so that we're out in the community more, we are requesting to return to the 2019 FTE level. And I thought I would end with this. In this time of period where libraries are caught in the middle of the culture wars and increasing censorship of materials and programs, I felt this quote was perfect. The library card is a passport to wonders and miracles, glimpses into other lives, religions, experiences, the hopes and dreams and strivings of all human beings. And it is this passport that opens our eyes and hearts to the world beyond our front doors that is one of our best hopes against tyranny, xenophobia, hopelessness, despair, anarchy, and ignorance. This quote is by Liva Bray. She's a young adult author. And seen in the picture is the mural that went up in the teen room this past year. A local artist from Corning did the mural. I find it beautiful. It really brightens up the space. I'm happy to answer any questions you have tonight. Additionally, you're welcome to reach out to me if you ever want a tour. I know I've done that with a few people here. thank you. It is truly a pleasure to work at TC Bell and represent it tonight. So I thank you for your time tonight.
Thank you, Teresa. I really appreciate being filled in on all the many things that you do, despite the fact that you have a tireless advocate here on the legislature in the person of Amanda Champion.
Yes, we do.
I don't think that most of us understood how many efforts you've been making in the community. So I appreciate your presentation. I think we have a question from your tireless advocate.
Oh, thank you.
Well, it's not a question. I think you all know what I'm going to say, that I love the library. And thank you for that presentation, Teresa. And thank you for all the hard work you've put in as the interim director. I can't remember what they call it.
Acting director, assistant director.
Well, thank you. And I appreciate the work that all the staff does there. And just a reminder, which I'm sure I will say again, but in about a month, less than a month, the Friends of the Library book sale will be starting 3 amazing weekends, books beyond belief. So, and those proceeds do go to the library. So I'll say it again when it's closer.
I'm pretty sure half those books came from our house.
Well, yeah.
Okay, Randy and then Greg.
Yes, thank you, Teresa. I have a question on OTR 14.
Okay.
It says, get my glasses off, that the level 1 positions are projected at $90,000 each. Is that correct?
Yes.
And then, and this may be a question for Lisa, I'm not sure, but in your budget, you have carryover and fund balance. Is that different from rollover, or is that, what does that mean?
I will have to check on that. I think that's just the carryover. But can I check on that, Randy, with you?
Yes.
Back
Okay.
to-
And the last question I have is there a capital fund set aside for the library at all for, is there a separate fund for that?
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, Lisa or Norma probably have an answer to Randy's
Randy,
question.
that is not our, it's not our rollover, it's their fund balance. So it's actually the library's fund balance. It is not the county's.
Because they are not a department.
They're not a department of the county, right? They're an agency.
Even though they're fully funded by the county, pretty much.
Not fully, but close.
Okay, all right.
Okay, Greg.
Hi, thanks for the presentation. As I sit across from the library champion, as I guess I'll call her, I just have 2 questions. One, is the goal to get back to 49.4 FTEs?
Not at this point. We just want to get back to pre-pandemic levels.
Okay, so do you foresee, and again, I know this is like a crystal ball question, but do you foresee that this being the last request for additional FTEs so long as everything goes as planned in the next couple of years? Or do you see there being a need for more FTEs to be added to the staff?
I don't see that at this point. This will help us get to where we want to be with outreach, as I said, and other services that have come from like living with COVID and, you know, increasing services. So.
Got it. I appreciate that answer. And then as we look at benchmarking against other libraries of similar, size and service levels,
Mm-hmm.
the 85-15 split between county funding and other funding sources, where does that benchmark in terms of what a public library should be at? Are there opportunities out there if there was maybe an additional staff person? I think to some of Rich's comments, so are there grants available that we're not able to get because we don't have the resources to apply for them? Is there more money out there that we can be getting in some way for, that's not driven from the county? How does that compare, the funding 85-15 to sort of the industry is the only way I know how to say it.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, there are grants that we can go for sure, that we do try to, I mean, as I mentioned, we went for the ALA Rescue Humanity Grant, ARPA funding it was, and that's supporting the Tompkins County Jail Initiative.
Okay. I guess Lisa or Norma, do you know how this composition of funding for library compares to other library systems in the state, or?
Do not.
Okay.
I do know that we have to maintain our current effort, and that was something that came up in the last year or two, that because we were unable to maintain the level of effort as usual during COVID, we had to, all libraries who were unable to do that had to submit to the state the reason why, and we had to prepare a number of documents to submit to the state why we were unable to maintain the level of effort during COVID. So I know that there are requirements there that if we drop below a certain maintenance of effort, it jeopardizes the library state funding.
Yes, it does.
So is our target at the maintenance of effort, or will we still have to file for sort of that?
We will not have to file.
Okay.
We
And that's
currently
inclusive of the OTRs or excluding?
exclusive of the OTRs.
Okay, so the target is maintenance of effort. We've met the threshold. Okay.
Thanks. Good question, Greg. And speaking, oh, sorry.
Yeah, Greg, I mean, I could check into other libraries in the state if you would like me to and do some research.
It's a curiosity question. I think it's always good to benchmark and know where we're at. If this is sort of an industry standard,
Yeah.
totally fine. It's nothing to spend a lot of time on. I just didn't know if there was facts or figures.
I'd have to do research, and as a librarian, I could do that. Yeah, I'm not too familiar with the other states. I've been at this about a year, so sorry about that.
You're doing a great job. We appreciate it.
Mhm.
Lee.
Is it possible to go back to the slide that shows the apportionment of the budget? I think we saw where we're at 85% county funded. I'm curious what that state contribution is that the maintenance of effort is able to secure
Okay, so you want to go back to the,
early on.
let me see if I can get. Right here, or
Yeah, so
That
that's,
works. So the state funding by meeting those thresholds is for next year, $125,000.
Mhm.
And the over target request for maintenance of effort to maintain that is 180 thereabouts,
Mhm.
maybe a little bit higher. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
thank you, Veronica.
Just to clarify for OTR number 12 about the security, is this like an increase in the amount of security services, or is it just maintaining it and moving the money into target?
It's not an increase in security services. We just went with a different security company. We needed someone more dependable.
I meant like comparing the request here for 2023 to 2022.
So
Sorry, am I not understanding? I thought that the current service is dependable, is what you're saying here, or?
no, we have the current service, but we're asking for the additional funding for it.
You've secured a more expensive service, is that?
That is correct.
Yes.
Okay.
So we're asking for the additional funding to keep supporting that.
Okay, that's clear. Thank
Does
you.
Does that make sense?
I think so. Thank you.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, and I want to thank everyone. The questions that you've addressed to Teresa have been on point, budget-related questions, which have not always been the case this evening. It's been brought to my attention that I have been lax in imposing the crisp standards, and you are all getting a bit soggy. So we're going to be going forward now. We have a couple of people on the agenda who need a lot of time because they do a lot of different things. And I'm going to be cracking the crisp whip as we go forward. So thank you, Teresa. And Mike?
I just wanted to point out the one thing that if we don't maintain effort, we were in in danger of losing was the status of as the central library.
Yep.
And that's something up for the Finger Lakes Library System.
Mhm.
So that's something we should keep in mind.
That's true.
Thanks, Mike. That's good to know. So thank you, Teresa.
Thank you very much.
Good evening.
And if you have any questions, please reach out to me. If there's not enough clarity, I can find out for sure.
We'll do that.
Thank you. Have a
Okay.
good day.
Okay, so now we're moving forward with the Human Services Coalition. I hope that you have all availed yourself of the valuable information that Norma sent to us in the form of this distribution about the agencies that participate in the Human Services Coalition. You should have received this as an email. And with that, I will let you all take it away.
Try to share the screen here real quick.
You can find the presentation on pages 5-13 and 5-19.
Beautiful. Hi, everybody. Good evening. Thank you for having us. I am Cindy Wilcox. I am the Executive Director of the Human Services Coalition. I started here in April, so I've been here 5 whole months. We finally let Kathy Schlatter retire after 3 years of trying. So happy to be here. This is John Mazzello, our Deputy Director, and my boss in this process. So thank you. We're going to kind of share the presentation today, so we're going to go back and forth a little bit. So I am going to give it to John to kick us off.
All right. Well, thanks, everyone. It's nice to see you again after a couple of years remote. I want to draw your attention, as Deborah mentioned, to the handouts that we passed out. There's 3 items that you have found useful in the past, and I hope you continue to find useful. The first is a description of the different agencies that participate in HSC's review process and receive funding from the county. The second is a spreadsheet, basically a table of the funding requests and some historic funding levels over the past couple of years, and our requests and Lisa's recommendations. And then finally, there's a series of charts, mine are in black and white, but color, that are the historical funding of the agencies over the last decade or so. So hopefully those provide a little bit more context to the information that we'll be presenting today about the agencies. So you can see up there on the screen, just the general budget numbers. These figures encompass both the community agencies that are supported through this budget line as well as OAR. They're broken out in your table, but combined up here on the screen. So I just want to take a moment to walk you through what HSC's funding review process looks like. And first, I'd like to start just by thanking you for the trust and the responsibility that you give to us, and certainly it's not something that we do not take lightly, to review agencies that are requesting county funding and to make recommendations to the county for that. So thank you for that, the trust. The application process for organizations begins in April. Way back in April, we ask these agencies to think about what does 2023 look like. And after we have an application process with a paper or an online application, then organizations will meet with our review committee. It's a group of experts who have a long history, many of them in human services and government service and public service in some way, organizations, nonprofit and government. So a lot of history there. And the agencies that apply through the process requesting funding meet with that committee, meet with us. And we meet with everyone. And so we talk to everybody and we ask them questions. It's almost like this meeting, actually, where they present and then we talk to them. The application process includes both a program review as well as an understanding of their finances, looking at their financial reports and looking at their books there a little bit to understand how they're doing both programmatically and financially. And then we don't just have that one application and then never talk to the agencies again. We're engaging with agencies throughout the year. Sometimes we will select organizations to work with on a particular area. Maybe they need some assistance with something financial. Maybe they need some assistance with their data and evaluation. Sometimes they have questions about their boards. So we work with organizations throughout the year and we check in about quarterly. We're due for one here now in the fall pretty soon, just to see how things are going. And we've been doing that throughout since the beginning of the pandemic, really, to check in with them just to see how things are going, just generally in a context that is removed from an application process. I do also want to point out that the funding that the county helps to allocate or that allocates to the agencies also is supported by a portion of the city sales tax that's collected. And the way that this works is that the number that's built into the budget is based on the actual sales tax collections from the most recently completed year. So for 2023 coming up, the city's share is $421,001. And that's based on the actual sales tax collections last year. And that number is up from last year because 2020, remember, sales tax was down. So there's a little bit of a lag there, but it allows us to know what the amount is. And that's a portion of the sales tax based on an agreement with the city, between the city and the county and other entities. So just to show you really quickly, the agencies that participated in the process this year, for those of you who've been on the legislature for a while, these will be familiar to you, but we do have a couple of changes this year. So first of all, we have one new organization, Ithaca Welcomes Refugees. It's an organization that supports refugees and immigrants who have been settled here in Tompkins County with their immediate needs, as well as some of their long-term needs, and supporting their families as they make that transition to living in this community. That is one that applied for the first time. I do want to point out that we meet several times a year with organizations that are interested in seeking county funding. Predominantly, we receive referrals from legislators or from county staff. They will recommend if someone approaches a legislator and says, how do I get county funding? Oftentimes we'll talk to HSC and they'll walk you through the process and we can talk about it. So we meet with organizations frequently. We met with several for this cycle. Only Ithaca Welcomes Refugees elected to apply this year. We also have one agency that had received funding in the past that is not seeking funding this year. That's Alternatives Impact, the nonprofit arm, if you will, of Alternatives Federal Credit Union. And that's the organization that had historically supported the VITA, Volunteer Income Tax Assistance Program. They have decided that they will not be providing that service in future years. And since that was something that was supported by this budget line, they did not apply, and we're not requesting any funding for that organization. However, Cindy will talk a little bit about the income tax prep program when we talk about our OTRs.
Okay, so major influences for this go round. So the COVID-19 virus has subsided a bit. Unfortunately, though, I think the impact of COVID-19 hasn't quite subsided for many of our community agencies. We are seeing still a kind of sustained elevated need for programs and services within the agencies. Of the 19 organizations in the funding process, about a quarter of them saw a decrease in, only about a quarter of them saw a decrease in service demand. But unfortunately, over half of them saw a decrease in contributions. So this got this elevated need coupled with, less contributions is a little bit of a challenge right now. Also a challenge for a lot of the agencies is workforce. I know that you've heard this from department heads probably during this process. Retention continues to be difficult. We have pretty shallow labor pools, recruitment's a challenge. And then even with agencies that can recruit, staff capacity is just not what it used to be because so many of our kind of seasoned professionals have retired. So, kind of rebuilding that capacity and that expertise takes time. At the leadership level, we do still have quite a bit of turnover. We have new directors at 6 of the 19 agencies this year. And I think we figured out, it was 7 last year. So like in the last few years, it's almost like 3/4 of the directors have turned over. So of course that's a transition time. And then of course, inflation, the costs are rising. That means kind of challenging budget times and then also rising need. So when inflation goes up, costs go up, People need food, they're stressed, they need mental health services, et cetera, et cetera. So also a lot of our agencies that have contracts, a lot of times they're multiple year contracts, but they have flat funding. So there's really not any cost of living adjustments. So there's some challenges out there. But I have to say, even in the face of kind of unprecedented labor issues and financial difficulties, our agencies are showing up. We are lucky and grateful to have such great partnerships with the county in so many ways, from a financial perspective and just from a service partnership perspective. And, working with, departments like Department of Health and DSS and Office for the Aging, we're still getting the work done. So, kudos to the agencies and to the partnerships with the county. So
I just want to take a minute to talk about some of the over target requests, and we'll go through these pretty quickly because these are all programs that I think are relatively familiar to many of you. These on this slide are all ones that are recommended in the county administrator's budget. So the first is one that the legislature has supported for a number of years. It's Law New York's reentry project, and this is one where Lisa's recommending that be completely covered by ARPA funds. And this is a program where Law New York works with people who are returning from incarceration, returning to the community, and helping them to work through some of the challenges related to that, particularly helping them to address barriers to seeking employment or housing or the benefits that they might be due. That was recommended to be completely covered by ARPA. The second is an OTR that is one that has been supported over the past several years for OAR, and that's case management at Endeavor House. And this is a location that provides safe housing for men who are returning from incarceration. And this was previously supported with one-time funding. And this year we requested, and it is recommended to be supported through target funding. Next is one that is in addition to a program that has been supported through target funding for years now. It's INHS's minor home repair program. And this is a program that supports keeping people in their homes by making repairs and modifications to their house that fall within a $5,000 or 50 hours of work threshold. And over the last couple of years, it's become, as if any of you have tried to do work on your houses know, it's become more expensive in general to do this kind of work. But particularly for this program, we're requesting this funding to support administrative aspects of the program. Previously, the repair specialists themselves also handled the customer service aspect, setting up the appointments, communicating with the clients, ordering the materials and supplies. And it became, first of all, challenging to meet the demand when the repair people were spending a lot of the time, engaging with the potential clients and talking with them about the program, but also made it really difficult for INHS to be able to attract and secure the right candidates for the job. Because now, not only are you looking for a scarce thing, a person who's got those skills to do the repair work, now you're looking for someone who also has that kind of customer service and computer skills to be available to do that other kind of work as well. So it's really important. This program helps to keep people in their homes. And we felt that HSC felt the request to split out that administrative function was compelling, and that is recommended as target funding as well. And then the last one on this slide is also one that's been supported for a number of years since 2019. It's parole and housing case management at OAR. And so this is working directly with folks who are on parole and have housing needs. This is one that's been supported as a one-time request for the last few years and now is recommended for target funding after this time. So I'll pass it over to Cindy for just the last couple.
Okay, so John mentioned the tax prep program. In the past, the Tompkins County has supported the VITA program through target funding, and in May of this year, Alternatives has announced that it would no longer be providing it. So this funding is basically a set aside, and it would provide support roughly about the same amount as last year to a new provider of the VITA program. HSC has been spending quite a bit of time working with community agencies on trying to come up with a viable, feasible plan to continue the program. It's an important one. It serves, over 1,500 Tompkins County residents a year, and it brings in like over $4 million, like about $4 million in state and federal refunds. So it's really valuable. This is a tax program for low-income folks. So although I don't have anything to announce today, we're getting very close. So we're hoping within about a month, we will have a viable plan. Next one is Sunflower House case management. This is year 2 of a 3-year over target request, a one-time request for case management services for Sunflower House. This is a program that serves about 12 people returning to the community from incarceration. And this level of funding, the $69,472, is a level of funding that was established by the legislator last year for this year 2 of 3. So last year it was funded at $27,680. So this is year 2 of 3 for that. And Lisa is recommending that that continue as one time. Next is Tompkins Learning Partners. Tompkins Learning Partners is looking for support to hire a part-time teacher to teach students at the lowest levels of literacy. The Tompkins Learning Partners has seen a significant increase in low literacy learners. And as you know, literacy affects all parts of people's lives, health, employment, education, citizenship. And even though Tompkins County has a lower than average illiteracy rate, it's like 10% lower than the state average, over 85% of Tompkins Learning Partners students read at a 4th grade level, and over 90% of their students are low income. Tompkins Learning Partners plans to include this teacher position in their state education department application when it's up for renewal, but that doesn't happen until 2024. They really want to bring on the teacher now, start to meet the need, and then hopefully the state education department will absorb that and starting in 2024.
So the hope is this is actually going to be a one-time.
Yes.
Thank you.
By definition. And then our last one is Southside Community Center. We recommended that this be funded as a target at $54,000, and Lisa is recommending it's at a one-time at $25,000. This is to support the Southside Community Center's Hot Meals program. The funds basically would pay for distribution of hot and warm meals to people experiencing homelessness, both in the encampments and showing up at Southside Community Center. Southside does continue to see an elevated need, slightly increased need for meals from people who are hungry. And this program will provide hot and warm meals for folks who really don't have access to kitchens. So, there are food pantries and such, but oftentimes pantry food needs preparation space. This gives folks hot meals that they could kind of grab and go. Southside did recently become a partner of the Food Bank of the Southern Tier, and that kind of enables them to apply for funds with them, and they are working to secure additional funding to support this program as well. So that is the end of our over target requests. Before I open it up for questions, I just want to acknowledge that there are representatives from the organizations that have over target requests. They're either here, we have Kayla from Southside behind me, or on the Zoom. So happy to take questions.
Okay, who has questions? Mike Lane.
I wonder what you heard from AFCU as to why they are discontinuing the tax prep. They're supposed to be a not-for-profit that has touted this program over the years. I just kind of wondered what they're saying.
So they have decided to take their alternatives impact program in a different strategic direction. Still kind of maintaining their focus on low income and actually communities of color, but they feel like their direction needs to be more along the lines of kind of social entrepreneurship and supporting entrepreneurs of color and really kind of more along the lending, which is more aligned with their mission. That said, they are being extremely generous with their time and guidance to help us continue the program. So although they went in a different strategic direction, they do appreciate the value of the program and are helping us to keep it going.
I would like the county to take it over. Thank you.
Well, that dropped like a bomb. Veronica.
Thank you. I wanted to ask about the Southside Hot Meal Program, which sounds like a pretty great thing, especially since, it seems like Southside already has like access to folks in the encampments, which is, we've been talking about trying to assist in the struggles people are facing there, as well as people who are like hungry and living in Southside. And this seems like a good way to, do a little bit with existing infrastructure to keep folks out of a like crisis situation. So I'm wondering, why aren't we funding it all the way? And also, what is in terms of like how many meals per week to whom? What are we talking here? And I don't know if the folks from Southside wanted to answer that part. 2 questions.
So who wants to start?
Maybe to Lisa first.
Yeah, the first question goes to Lisa.
I can answer, and thanks for the question. I recommend it as one time because it's a new program, firstly, and also in terms of, I had asked questions regarding the program being networked with the other food providers, the pantries and loaves and fishes, and whether there were maybe economies of scale there as opposed to purchasing the food from at retail costs from other from restaurants. So I thought that it would be helpful to gather data on the program and understand more about the number of people it served and whether whether that data could help in the future. I'm glad to hear from Cindy that they've now networked with the Food Bank of the Southern Tier.
That'll save a considerable amount of money in terms of the food acquisition costs. Is that not true?
Well, can I turn it over? You know all the details. This is Kayla Matos from Southside.
So I would just like to say a little background on this program, the Hot Meals program. The reason why I started was because Agave and Ithaca Bakery in the beginning of the year got a grant through New York State in order to help push out hot meals to our community. So they partnered with us, and for about 3 months, we piloted this program where they provided 20 hot meals Monday through Friday to the center, and we got to distribute it to families who needed it. Unfortunately, after those 3 months ended, we did not have funds to sustain it, and Agave nor Ithaca Bakery did as well. So we did put a pause on the program. However, the needs we still had people coming in, the numbers continued to grow. So the team tried to put our heads together and figure out ways that we could continue this program. One of the ways was requesting additional county funding, as well as talking to the food bank to figure out any grant opportunities that could allow for this to continue, which is when we learned that the impact grant is something that we could do. So in conjunction with us applying to the for the impact grant, we also are now applying to become a community meal site in Ithaca through the food bank.
So there are multiple funding sources that you're pursuing.
Yes. Because we do also foresee that once this program does continue back up, word by mouth is going to spread fast, and there's going to be an increase for the 20 meals. We are able to subsidize a little bit right now because we do have an after school program and we have a cook who is providing hot meals to our program. So we just let her know, like, just make extra meals just in case we do have anybody off the in from the community who needs a plate, or if we have any families who are regularly attending the center and just needs dinner for the night.
Thank you.
Can I ask a follow-up while Kayla's up here?
Yeah,
which is, do you happen to know what the, I guess you had in the pilot, you were doing 100 meals per week. Do you happen to know what the cost of that was? And I realize it might be different because it was going to the restaurants instead of to you.
I don't recall. However, I know that working with Agava and putting together the budget, they said that one meal would be about $13 or so. So that's why the overall request was for a little bit under 70,000. But yeah.
And then do you know, like, if with money from the county, do you know, like, when you'd be able to start up the hot meals again?
Yep.
And compared to, like, if, like, and or if you got money through the grant you're looking at through the, sorry, I'm blanking. Was it the Friendship Donation Network? No, the food bank, sorry.
Yeah.
With the food bank, when, like, how are those both timelines?
So definitely by the beginning of the year. The good thing is now that we're going into holiday season, we do just naturally have a bunch of community meals and events that we can push out and feed our community for. But definitely beginning of the year, we've been in conversation and we've maintained the connection with Agava and Ithaca Bakery. So this is something that we are just ready. They're ready for as soon as we call and let them know we need our meals to start up again. I'm ready to deliver.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, Greg and Randy.
So are you specifically partnering with Agava and Ithaca Bakery, or are you giving other local businesses the opportunity to participate in the program because maybe they could provide it at a $10 cost or $12 cost?
So we are specifically partnering with them just because we do have the relationship. However, I'm sure we are open to growing our partnerships and the participation of other restaurants in the local area.
That'd be great.
Randy?
Thank you. Greg, good question. Takeaway for me. I appreciate what Veronica's saying, and I agree with her. And I think a one-year, one-time thing is a way to start. But my question is, so all the food does come from different restaurants? It's being prepared?
Well, it comes from Agava or Ithaca Bakeries. Like, they have a switch off between the two. So like 1 month they were doing Ithaca Bakery, the next month was Agava, then Ithaca Bakery again. I'm not really sure how those dynamics worked out between those two. However, we had one head person, I believe from Ithaca Bakery, Lindsay, that we maintained that connection with.
I actually took a tour of a CC today, and they have a kitchen there that is very underutilized. So it's just a thought. So
That's interesting, Randy. Thank you. Travis?
I'm a little familiar with feeding families. We do over 600 meals a week. You have a good kitchen. You have an excellent cook. If you go through the food bank, you can become a kids cafe, and not the food bank. You can become a kids cafe, and you can give out meals to your participants as well as community members and kids from the community. You then can become registered through CACFP, and you'll get reimbursed for all the meals that you give out and all the snacks that you give out, and it'll cover your cost for your meals program.
Yeah, we're already partnering with, we already have a relationship with CACFP. However, the Kids Cafe, that wasn't something that I was aware of. So I can definitely look into that.
Yeah, they do one in Elmira at the Ernie Davis Center. But partnering with a restaurant at the cost of even $10 a meal, the meals that you all give out now, that we give out, they cost less than $3 a meal. You do have to pay for staff, but partnering with a local restaurant at anything more than $5 a meal is just not sustainable over a long period of time. The need to feed the community is great. There's a great need for that. But if you want to do it long term, you have to find a way to make it sustainable.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, giving us the year to figure this out and pilot it, we can figure out what works, what doesn't work, and come back to the drawing board.
Thanks for that input, Travis. This kind of information sharing, I think, is really important because sometimes there's a less expensive way to do it than for the county to just jump in and pay every penny of, a single arrangement when there are alternatives. For the benefit of those of us who aren't familiar with these kinds of programs, could you just tell us what CACFP is?
Yeah, CACFP stands for Child and Adult. It literally stands for Child and Adult Food Program. So in the way that SOPSI utilizes it is for our after school program. It helps us claim for reimbursement for the meals and snack that is served on a daily basis.
So is that a state program or a federal?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, any other questions for Kayla or any of the other representatives of supported agencies who are here? All right. Thank you. Do you all want to go forward with just the HSC piece?
Yes.
Okay,
That's
thank
okay
you.
with you.
Share my screen again here real quick. Ed? All right. Well, nice to see you again. Dominic asked us to put pictures up, and in case some of you haven't been to our office yet, we moved right before the pandemic to the Tioga Place building, the M&T Bank building, where TC3 is on the Commons on Tioga Street. So we're no longer in Center Ithaca, and I thought we'd just let you know because the door is open now and you can stop it. All right, so you can see up here HSC's recommended budget for 2023, and this is basically just kind of maintaining the status quo from last year. Our increase there in the target funding is a 3% baseline increase, and we are requesting 2 OTRs, and they are the same 2 at the same level as last year. So just a few of the major influences on HSC as an organization over the past year. First of all, as Cindy mentioned, new leadership. So we have a new executive director, we have a new finance director, Taylor Fellman, who's replaced our longtime finance director, Jill Sage. We have a new board president, board chair, Rob Lawless from Cuga Health Partners. So a lot of new leadership at the
New deputy director.
Though a lot of us have been around. Actually, everybody's not new, but new in the roles. I really want to emphasize, especially putting on my 2-on-1 hat, really emphasize the value of the partnership with Tompkins County over the past year. I think, we heard it this morning in a conversation with DSS appreciating us, but I want to share, our appreciation for the partnership over the past, few years and beyond, but especially over the past few years with Tompkins County. 2-on-1, our 2-on-1 information referral program continues to be the a front door for people seeking information about COVID and vaccinations and testing and rules and quarantine and all that stuff that we thought maybe would be behind us is not behind us and is not behind us for a lot of people. And we see that ebb and flow, but now new boosters are out. And so people want to know, how do I sign up for those? How can I get access to it? The pharmacies don't really have a lot. How do I figure this out? We work with DSS in many ways, but pandemic related in the emergency rental assistance program. We've been serving as the organization that helps to support people who are seeking to apply who can't figure out how to do it on their own or don't have internet access. This is a program that supports, it can potentially support rental arrears for people who owe a lot of money for their rent, sometimes in the $10,000 plus range. And also importantly now can provide a stay of eviction for people while their applications for ERAP are pending. And so we've been providing that customer support role. We don't provide the money, that's state money or the federal money flowing through the state. But we provide that role. So an area where we've been working closely with DSS to market this program and to support people who are really at risk of losing their housing, particularly for being unable to pay. We've been working on the eviction displacement project. This is primarily within the city of Ithaca, but a program that HSC has secured private funding for that allows us to bring together a number of partners, including legal and the city and others, to really bolster the supports that our community provides to people who are at risk of eviction or at risk of losing their housing in various ways. So support them in knowing what their rights are and knowing what resources are available to them and providing some financial support to help keep them from being displaced out of their homes. And then finally, with our partnerships, the Health Planning Council program of HSC works closely with Tompkins County Health Department, with the Office for the Aging and others to help to plan our systems to improve the quality of care that we provide people, and really think about how we can provide services and supports across both our nonprofit and our government offices in an equitable way. And of course, 211, that's, nope, not 211. HSC in general, our stock and trade is really supporting our nonprofit sector. And so over the past year, a number of initiatives of real value have been coming out of the organization. First of all, our housing needs assessment, which was conducted in partnership with the Continuum of Care, which supports all the organizations, brings together all the organizations that are supporting people who are homeless or at risk of becoming homeless. To understand really what are the needs in the community and how do we prioritize those. And that's a report that was recently issued and can really guide the work of the COC, the Continuum of Care, as well as other housing providers. We are just wrapping up the data collection phase of our salary and benefits survey for nonprofit organizations. We closed it earlier this week, and now we'll be doing the data crunching. This is something that if I talk to agencies, like the number one thing they want, how much are we supposed to be paying our staff at this point, right? That just all the numbers are all over the place now, and really no one is quite sure what the going rate is. We have done this historically every 3 years. We got pushed back a year because of the pandemic. So now it's really due and really valuable to understand what are people paying, what benefits do they provide to really help our organizations. As Cindy mentioned in the previous presentation, the labor market is just kind of a difficult situation right now. And so helping organizations to understand what the going rates are in our community, what do different positions pay, and what are the different benefits that organizations are providing. We continue to provide lots of services around organizational development. Our workshop series is ramping back up in person, and we're seeing good demand for that. We continue to provide consulting support for organizations seeking assistance in lots of different ways with their organizations. One of the specific areas I draw your attention to is a new program that we've secured private funding for called Supporting Leaders of Color. And this is particularly to support nonprofit leaders who are either of color or supporting organizations that are, leaders of color. And this is really a participant-led program. This is one where the participants in this program are really going to decide what they as a group want to build their capacity in. And then the consultants that this program can provide will help them to figure out what they need and provide information and resources to them and really guide them through that. So we are bringing the funds, and the group is going to run with it and really develop their own agenda. So that's a really exciting project and a really unique one for this area that we're really excited to bring. And then finally, we've been working to support Hugo Medical Center. And what initially began as a conversation that Dr. Stallone started with us around how can we build communication between the hospital and some of the skilled nursing facilities and long-term care facilities to help to streamline the discharge process and help to keep the numbers in the hospital at manageable levels and get people out into the community where they need to be, especially as pandemic-related rules meant that as hospital capacity for beds decreased, then that meant that different parts of the hospital could be put on diversion or have people sent away to different locations. So what began as a kind of a pandemic conversation has continued now, and all of the partners really continue to see the value, and it's moved beyond just that conversation to longer term planning around how the hospital can partner with some of those facilities. And they'll be having an in-person meeting. They quarterly have in-person meetings, so they'll be having that in a week coming up. So that's really consistently happened, and we're really excited that we've been able to facilitate that conversation.
Okay, here are two of our target requests. As John said, they are both continuations of last year's requests, both in number and dollar amounts. So one of the strategic priorities of the coalition going forward is to be more data-driven in both our internal decision-making as well as our support to external organizations around data management, using data to drive decisions, et cetera. Both of these positions do help support that strategic priority, as well as many others. But the first one is the housing specialist. So the past 2 years, HSC's housing initiatives have grown significantly. And this position's already had a huge impact on helping us kind of grow our capacity for housing initiatives and the capacity of our continuum of care. The housing specialist basically manages a lot of the kind of coordination, logistics, administration, kind of coordinated entry, which is the kind of way that we manage folks that are looking for supportive housing, and we rank them by need and try to, help them find housing. Those are the kind of things that the housing specialist is doing. What that does is it frees up the director to do the big things like bring in more resources to the county and provide more support and responsiveness to the continuum of care and those providers and other housing providers. So it's really made a huge difference. I mean, I actually asked Liddy Barger, who was our housing director, I said, in a word, what has this housing specialist done for you? She says, it's like doubled my capacity. So, it's really helped the system overall, and it's been really valuable. The second is the data specialist. We hired the data specialist this past spring, and again, she's already contributing to increased capacity for HSC and the organizations we support. Again, internal data as well as external support for using data. The data specialist is really focused on her first projects are around 211 and managing the 211 database. So before this position, before you provided support for this position last year, we were the only 211 in the state without a dedicated data analyst or data specialist. So they're really helping us manage kind of the information. We know that the community needs, God bless you, remain high. 211 calls are up 60% from pre-pandemic levels, and programs change very frequently. And to keep up with that, to make sure that we're providing the most excellent service, we really need somebody dedicated to that as well. The data specialist is also recently trained in our homeless management information system, which is again another database regarding folks who are experiencing homelessness. Very rich in data and information. We just have to get somebody to learn how to pull it out, and this person is going to do that as well. And of course, the salary and benefit survey. She was barely in our office on the first day, and we're like, okay, you need to start this, and she's running with that as well. Really will help with recruitment and retention efforts. And then again, working with funded agencies externally to help them get stronger in this area as well. And I think that's it. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Cindy. Randy has a question.
Yes, the ARPA funds, are those funds that the county allocated last year, or are they funds that you received directly?
There are funds. They're the county's funds.
That was set up from last year.
I don't know if they're last year's funds or I don't know if they're the first tranche or the second tranche, but obviously one of the priorities for the ARPA funds was to meet the needs of communities that were severely and unequally impacted by the pandemic, and HSC's programs are certainly a great mechanism for us to use the funds that way.
I wasn't questioning the need. I was just questioning where they came from. So.
Anybody else? Okay. Thank you, Cindy. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Appreciate it. Thank you.
All right. Okay. So we are now an hour or 2 hours and 35 minutes in, and we still have an hour's worth of program presentations to get through. So we're going to take a 10-minute break.
Maybe not for last time.
Except for
Boston, was making the youngest head coach in the league. Just about 2 months from his former colleague, Will Harvey, who left to go be the head coach in Utah. Musula is young. He's in his first season on the front of an NBA bench. But around the league and certainly within an organization, they believe this is somebody who is going to be a head coach in the NBA sooner than later. Well, it's come far sooner than anyone within that, including Musula. This organization believes in his leadership, his character, and they believe tactically that this is someone that helped them try to stay at a championship level. There's no question this is going to be a daunting task for the coach whose own head coaching experience is at the Division II level. College basketball, played at West Virginia, for John Beeline, as a college player for Joe Mazzulla at 34 years old, will be the interim head coach for the Celtics on Parole with the Delta suspension. That's expected to be announced perhaps in the next time. Spending millions of dollars on proper projects, now such as one of those projects, a volleyball court requested by Bob at his daughter's school. John David pleaded guilty to conspiracy to commit fraud and theft. He faced state charges but had been dropped in exchange for his plea and his agreement to testify against others. But Bob is not in charge.
As for other headlines, you have Carolina Panthers fans holding their breath after Christian McConnell's on the injury report with an ankle injury. And he wasn't in there for this day of practice and said he's good to go, but he missed 22 after 33 days. Tennis lovers, what else is matter last week? Well, there was bumping to Dahl for the final pro match of his career. Sunday, he and Dahl take his career at the Labour Cup in London. Tomorrow, quicker shot fly Leonard for players participating in the training camp. But the team's going to pursue obviously Leonard, who was on the list all of last season after his full ACL in the 2021 playoffs. He mentioned Utah, the Utah guys continue to clean house, creating second leading scorer, Bojan Bogdanovic to the Pistons for Kelly and Lynn to save the lead. That's a quick stage. But they have already traded Donovan Mitchell to Gobert. And finally, the NCAA for the LSU football program on 1 year of probation after a former assistant coach admitted in meeting with a prospect and giving him 2 years during a COVID-19 recruiting period.
Coming up to the key Cowboys star return for Dallas's Monday night showdown with the Giants. Adam Schefter's injury report is standing by. Plus, play design that could have 2 of the Dolphins challenge the Bills in Sunday's showdown for AFC East supremacy.
How does Popeye's chicken sandwich get so crunchy, juicy, and tasty? We make everything fry. Make taste buds dance for $4.49.
When moderate to severe ulcerative colitis persists, put it in check with Rinvoq, a once-daily pill.
When you see the unpredictable, check.
When you see LV back, I got lasting steroid-free remission with Rinvoq. Check.
And when you seek out the upper hand, Rinvoq helps physically repair the colon lining.
Check. Rapid symptom relief, lasting steroid-free remission, and a chance to physically repair the colon lining. Check, check, and check.
Rinvoq can lower your ability to fight infections, including TB, serious infections and blood clots, some fatal, cancers, including lymphoma and skin cancer, death, heart attack, stroke, and tears in the stomach or intestines occur. People 50 and older with at least one heart disease risk factor have higher risks. Don't take if allergic to Rinvoq, as serious reactions can occur. Tell your doctor if you are or may become pregnant. Put UC in check and keep it there with Rinvoq. Ask your gastroenterologist about Rinvoq and learn how acne could help you save. It's a lovely thing. So whatever you have to do, you got a lovely thing to do it. That's true. Whatever you got to do is something that cars built with safety in mind, even disguise. The Volkswagen Atlas with standard assist.
Adam, look at what I got. Is that the new iPhone 14 Pro?
Yeah, with this amazing new camera.
And you got it on Verizon.
Better. I got Verizon's new plan. It's Apple One. That's Apple Music, Apple TV Plus, Apple Arcade, iCloud Plus. So it's the deal I got from Verizon. iPhone 14 Pro on that. You should get one. Selfie time. Wow, you can hustle when you need to.
Get a new iPhone 14 Pro on us. And get it with one unlimited for iPhone. Only on the Network America relies on Verizon. Thanks for Safe Farm. I really want that personal price plan. So I'll admit it. That phone got. Dude, you do not need to get that person. The State Farm personal price plan simply helps you create a total price just for you. Really? Who's ready for the jazz band? Who is that guy? Sure. Call it quick to get a quote today. Like a good neighbor, State Farm is there. We're celebrating 50 years of Popeye signature chicken with Heal Green Love. The album just takes 50 years of crunchy juicy chicken you've been serving since 1972. 5 pieces, 5 again, just $6.99. A new generation listening soccer. Guitar. With a warm-up magic to support. The Stars and Stripes face Japan as they cut from the world stage. This is our time. Tomorrow, Japan, USA, 3 a.m. Eastern on ESPN2 and ESPN Plus. Sports Center, brought to you by Duracell, engineered for more. And Popeyes.
Yeah, no, but we know sports and everything. NFC showdown on Monday Night Football. The 1-1 Cowboys at the MetLife Stadium to face the perfect shot.
This goes for you people back there in the office.
I'd say hi in my last minute.
Okay, you got making good use of your time.
Yes.
Yes.
I changed the water.
Okay, in the interest of getting out of here before midnight, we are going to go back into session. So where is our representative from the Office of Human Rights? Ken Clark, I see you. Hello.
Good evening.
Okay, you can find Ken's presentation on page 4-109 of your budget books.
Okay, and I'm going to share my screen with you. Oh, hold on one second. Let's see. Okay. All right. The visual that you see is a multilingual chalking of the 30 articles of the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, which guides our work. And okay, here you see the comparisons between the 2020 figures and those of 2023. The 2023 target reflects salary changes, and the remainder of the budget remains largely the same as it was in 2022. An addendum has been added to the original OTR request of $40,000, which I will explain momentarily. Our full-time equivalents remain the same at 2.5. We, as I mentioned last year, we had reduced the hours of the education and outreach person from 40 to 20 hours. Decided to do that and to have that person to work in the context of that schedule. This year's OTR, as was the case last year, is being requested for education and outreach, enabling OHR to invite speakers of national reputation and to be able to basically support our regularly scheduled programming. From these funds, we will also draw the keynote, we will also pay for, I should say, the keynote speaker for the 2023 Juneteenth celebration. From the time the county began to recognize Juneteenth in this way as a opportunity for education, but also to commemorate the holiday. The OHR has paid for the keynote speaker for these previous 2 years, Professor Scott Brown from UCLA and then Anna Gordon Reed of Harvard. We intend to continue to do that this upcoming year. The OTR also reflects an increased deliverable wage status for the information aide, Lourdes Cabrera, who is working with us in the office. That is the addition to the original request for 40 grand. So I welcome your questions and comments. The mural you see is one I'm sure is familiar to you, one of the numerous Ithaca Justice murals, which is a paraphrase of Maya Angelou's poem, "And Still I Rise." So I welcome your questions, comments, and I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Ken. Does anybody have questions for Dr. Ken? Greg.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. As we're looking at OTR 53, the education and promotional capacity for 2023, do you have any idea about how many programs that supports or will support in the past? And then what attendance and things have been like at these type of programming?
Ideally, I would like for those programs to be on a monthly basis, more or less. We have also will be incorporating into upcoming programming an initiative that we've embarked on with the Human Rights Commission and a number of human services and nonprofit organizations. It's tentatively, it's being called Building Democracy. A group of us have been meeting, the Human Rights Commission, specifically its Education and Outreach Committee. And these nonprofits have been meeting since late July. The plan and initiative in which for this fall, we will be hosting meetings, or rather programs on a monthly basis. One of them, the first one coming up next week on the 28th at 7, will be called Building Democracy, Your Voice, Your Vote. Jeff Furman and Laura Branca will be speaking at that event. Next month, we will be focused on youth and voting. There are students at Ithaca High School who are working on helping to educate their peers about voting and seeking to encourage them to register when they become of age. In November, we will be doing a program on voting and those who were formerly incarcerated. And then in December, a program that we're tentatively calling Health on the Ballot, the sort of intersection between well-being, human rights, and civic responsibility. Beginning in 2023, we'll be doing those programs on a quarterly basis. So there might be the occasion in which we may be doing 2 programs a month. One of those focused on civic education and nonpartisan voting registration, and something else.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Mike Lane.
Hi, again, thanks for the presentation. I wondered, you've been doing such an interesting variety of programming. I think that's been very, very commendable.
Thank you.
Things that you would like to do that you simply haven't got the wallet to do in your department? I mean, some kind of outreach programs, or are you doing what you think is necessary?
Well, we're doing some of what is necessary. We also too want to be able, say for instance, as things emerge, and a lot of times, we have to program to the moment, not, those things that sort of emerge out of the blue that become an issue. And we want to be able to, as possible, to hire, to bring folks in with expertise, which may have, an honorarium, of some sort that would enable us to do that, so that we can provide an opportunity for the community to engage those issues. And so it's, it's part of, so I think in some ways to answer your question, I think it's both, out of necessity, and it's also to be able to have the flexibility to respond to issues of the moment and to bring in expertise that I think could be beneficial to the community.
I think I understand. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Thanks, Annie.
Thanks for the presentation. I was wondering, so do you have enough staff and space, as you're saying you want to do programming, on a monthly basis, I'm just wondering if you have enough staff or bandwidth to do that. Do you have bandwidth? Is it in part of your program to be able to do other outreach, such as tabling at various events, or help with tabling as other departments do around the county, just to try and, as someone said, just to figure out how to do more outreach?
Well, I think we have enough bandwidth to do, and I think in particular with this civic education voter registration effort, we have, through that working group that we formed, have been able to do that. For instance, this past Tuesday, Joanna Green, one of our commissioners, and another individual were able to do some tabling at the Multicultural Resource Center, and they, I think, registered about 11 people. over a series of hours. And so that enables us by extension being part of that, and that being part of that initiative gives us some capacity to extend outreach in that way. And with Joanna being a member of the Commission's Education and Outreach Committee, that's a way in which we could do that type of outreach. And I think, I think that we based it on where we are in terms of our staffing at the moment. And with this initiative, which is, a partnership with a number of other, with individuals representing a variety of agencies. Some of those agencies are listed on the announcement of the program next week, that I'm sure you would have, I'm pretty sure you would have received. If you haven't, let me know. I think that is something that works in our favor.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, any other questions? I have a question. I think this one might be actually for Lisa and or Norma. I noticed that this $40,000 is year 2 of the 3-year OTR. Is that the $40,000 in rollover that appears in the 2022 adopted budget?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Shauna?
Hi there. I was wondering how many grievances you're actually receiving as far as complaints of either fair housing or discrimination. Are people still coming to your office to place formal complaints?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, I don't have hard numbers I could give you now. I mean, I could find those and give you more exact figures, but that's still, I mean, people still continue to call or email about concerns about housing. I mean, as has been the pattern really from the time I began as an interim director 4 years ago, the predominant complaints that we receive are related to employment and housing. Often housing that is, in some cases, related to the refusal to provide reasonable accommodations for residents, instances in which people feel that they are being maltreated and they are being threatened with eviction, those types of things under questionable circumstances. So those, we are continuing to get those types of inquiries. In some cases, people, for whatever reasons, do not choose to file with a complaint with the State Division of Human Rights. In other cases, they do. But people are still contacting us. I mean, it's been ebb and flow since the pandemic. I mean, a lot of it ebbed in the beginning. We've seen more flow, certainly almost invariably in the summertime, in spring and summer. Things inquiries tend to increase. Right now we're sort of in a slight lull, but that could change tomorrow.
Okay, I would love to see like an annual number, just a breakdown of how much we're seeing at least per month.
Okay.
Great, thank you.
Sure.
Yeah, and in that same vein, I would really like to see the number of people who, the number of views we get on these programs that y'all are presenting.
Well, Rob Brown provided me, Rob Henry, provided me some information. And our videos from the past year have been between 100 to 350 views each.
Okay. And how many of those have there been?
Let's see, hold on one second. I'll say over the past year, I would say approximately, probably about
Okay, thank you.
Yep, and those are all available to be seen on our YouTube channel. That's part of the county YouTube page.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thanks, Dr. Ken. We always enjoy seeing you.
Thank you. Good to see you all as well.
All righty. Okay, moving on now to the youth services.
Hello.
Hi.
Hey, Kate, how are you?
I'm hopefully going to make this really crisp for you guys.
Oh, we like it crisp. Thank you.
Good, good. Yeah. Can you guys see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Oops. There we go. Okay. So good evening. I think everybody knows me, but just in case, Kate Chinks Booth, Director of Tompkins County Youth Services. Before we get into the really short presentation PowerPoint we have for you this evening, I did want to say thanks to Lisa, Norma Jane, the Youth Services Advisory Board, the Resource Allocation Committee for their assistance and support through this year's process. I also wanted to acknowledge that Teresa Albert is here online with me. She has been an integral part of our budget process for a number of years, for the last 33 actually, and this year is no different. And so I just wanted to thank her for the extra time, energy, and effort that she put into it, and also highlight that 2 months ago she stepped into our deputy director role and is doing amazing work. And so I just wanted to say thank you and congrats to her again for that. And then we will get into the presentation. So looking at major influences in our 2023 budget, and really the proposed budget that's in front of you and the OTRs, we started our 2023 budget process knowing that we're beginning the process of launching a new funding cycle that will cover 2023 to 2026. We worked with our youth advisory board to determine sort of what the funding, what our priorities would be for the RFP that we were going to create, and how we would begin to put together a methodology to allocate the resources that were available. We released in mid-2020 a RFP that garnered several bids for service that gave us some insight into some important economic and programmatic challenges that are being faced by some of our community partners. And as we read through those, we saw that in some cases, some of those had a pattern of showing up in different ones. And so what you see on the screen here is just a highlight of some of those things that have come up. 2 years of flat funding since a 12% reduction in local funds was enacted in our 2021 budget. Both our funded agencies and our municipal partners have operated at that reduced funding level. We've seen, and they have faced raising operational and programmatic costs, limited funds, and rising costs, things like higher utility costs, higher wages, higher fees for subcontractors to provide essential service to some of the youth in their care. It's made it very difficult for them to meet those services, the demand for those services, which we have seen increase exponentially since COVID-19 pandemic started. There's also been a labor shortage, which we've heard a lot about tonight, and staff retention. These limited funds coupled with this labor shortage left fewer staff to do more work, which made it really impossible to recruit new staff, and retaining the current staff has been really difficult, and addressing the mental health issues and the staff burnout that's existed in some of these human service agencies has been a challenge that came forward for us in some of these bids. Next slide we're going to look at here is our recommended budget. As you can see, there is a 5% increase in expenditures, and that really comes down to the couple of OTRs that we're going to talk about. Our target did go up a little bit because there were some increases in wages due to contractual obligations. There's really no change in revenue here. One thing that I did want to just draw to your attention, you may remember last year we came to you talking about, we had a request for a little additional funding last year because we didn't think we were going to get the Safe Harbor grant. It comes down to DSS. We ended up getting that grant last year, which was a wonderful surprise to us. This year we don't know if we're going to get it, but if it does come down, we obviously will do a modification to the budget and let you know. But for purposes of this conversation, it's not shown here. Full-time equivalents will end the year with 4 FTEs, and our target for 2023 was 4. So there's been no change to us in actual positions for our department. Get into some of the over target requests. We just have 2 of them this year. Both of these were in the county administrator's budget. look at them a little bit individually. The first one and our top priority here, just a little over $55,000, is for the stabilization of the municipal youth service system. Each of our municipalities that are involved in the municipal youth service system either have a youth commission or they have a community council, and they utilize these bodies as for the purpose of assessing the needs of youth in their municipalities, and then they allocate funds to their chosen service provider to meet those needs. The funds that these groups allocate come from a few sources: county funding, funds from the actual municipality that match the funds from the county, and then a very small amount of state aid and is in the budgets, and that changes and varies depending on the municipality you're talking about. As I mentioned previously, since that 12% reduction in local funds hit in 2021, our municipalities have been operating within that lower level of funding. They've been really judicious over the last couple of years and cutting non-essential budget items, really trying to minimize the impact that had on the ability to provide programming to youth. They did utilize some small pockets of reserves that were for one reason or another. But as we have seen now, the lower funding shrinking up and drying up of those reserves, rising operational and programmatic costs, they really just can no longer sustain the support of the youth service programs that they are currently providing. And so this OTR really is requesting a reinstatement of those funds that were taken in 2021, and they're just at a little bit to make up for some of those increased costs that we have seen, in wages and in operational costs and other things. So that is the first one. The second OTR we have here is around supporting the capacity for our funded agencies, a little over $30,000. These are funds. We wanted to mention that these are funds that are matched in a couple of ways. For positive youth development funding that comes through, any agency that receives our funding does a 50% match, and any agency that is a runaway and homeless youth program does a 15% match. So these investments do generate or leverage local funds for youth programming, aside from what we put into the pot here. As I mentioned earlier, some of the challenges we saw in some of those bids for service came back were just the inability to, meet their costs, whether that was staff salaries or just operational cost. And like our municipal partners, they have been operating at that lower funding level. This OTR is represented as the amount of funds that we had in our target budget to allocate in our allocation process for 2023. The difference between that amount and the amount that came in on these bids, these agencies were telling us that they needed additional funds. And so this amount would allow our agencies to meet the costs associated with their funding and their operational needs, as well as invest in salaries and recruit new staff that will allow them to meet the needs of programming that we have seen drastically increase since COVID. Second, so I'm kind of a twofer here. We're going to do the second part will be the rec partnership. This is a pass-through for our department, but it does come through, so we wanted to highlight for you. The rec partnership itself has been in existence for about 30 years. It is an intermunicipal agreement, and so you can see all the members of the agreement listed here on this slide. The membership itself has a contract for service with the Ithaca Youth Bureau, and our department provides technical liaison assistance to them. The partnership itself is broken into 4 equal parts, with each of those parts being responsible for 25% of the overall budget that is agreed upon within the membership. Tompkins County, the city of Ithaca, and the town of Ithaca represent about 75% of that total budget, or 25% each respectively. The last quarter of that budget is broken down among the smaller municipalities that were listed on the previous slide using a formula that uses an average for the last 3 years of participation and the assessed property value of each of those municipalities. So the smaller municipalities, the more the municipality uses the rec partnership, the larger portion of that last 25% they would pay. Looking at the recommended budget, this year, the rec partnership voted on a maintenance of effort budget. We talked about the cost increases. The cost for that maintenance of effort budget came to $341,088. It's about a 6% increase over last year's budget. Altogether, that was about an $18,000 difference. But keep in mind, we talked about that we're only responsible for a quarter of that. So last year we paid $78,000. And then this year we're asking that we'll pay the $85,279 to be part of that total budget for the actual rec partnership. So you can see this is the 4553 is the amount, and it's recommended for target. And it's just want to take a second here to just sort of throw in there. It's really important to also remember that the rec partnership is it's a partnership that everyone has to move in tandem. So we have a bit of a snowball effect. So if the town or the city or, you know, any of the smaller municipalities would decide they didn't want to honor or weren't able to pay their amount, it could be possible that the rest of the partnerships could say, we don't want to do that also. And so that small amount of money could multiply very quickly and be really devastating to the program. So, you know, we're one of the flagships of this. And I think it's really a good testament to our collaboration efforts that for over 30 years, we've been able to do this successfully. So Teresa, did I miss anything? Okay, awesome. That is what I have for you. And I will stop sharing my screen.
Thank you, Kate. Does anybody have questions for Kate? Congratulations, Kate. You win the prize for the evening.
Awesome. Thank you all.
Have a good evening.
You too. Good night.
Good night. Thank you. All right, that leaves us with just one more presentation, recycling and materials management.
Save the best for last.
Yeah.
I'll certainly.
Okay, meanwhile, y'all can turn to page 4-1. Gotta put my glasses on. 170 of your budget book.
Tiny packaging. I don't mind just getting started to save some time here. I do have a good presentation, but for those of you who I've never really met or worked with, I'm Barb Ekstrom. I'm the director for the director for the Recycling and Materials Management Department. This is my 37th year, and I feel extremely good about what our community is doing, the work that's going on. I'm also happy to report that I now have a full staff of young, intelligent, and kind people that are helping our community with a lot of programs. And at the end of the day, that's what we're all about here, to do the best we can to service, which is why I got into public sector work. So what I will do is, while this is all going on, I'm going to just give you, I'll be spontaneous. I'll give you some really cool information to start with. Last year, and it sounds like a lot, we as a community recycled almost 13,300 tons of recyclables. That's what actually went to market, and we made money. It's been a wonderful year for revenues. And Mike, you know how many years we've suffered with terrible revenues, and that's gone very well. Our food scrap recycling program is dynamite. The drop spots have, we see many, I think it was like 20,000 customers at those, and everybody is so committed. They love the drop spot consultants who are, they're paid above living wage, and they help people on a regular basis, and they're so devoted to that. So last year we had about 500 tons of food scraps that went to those places. There's 16 of them. And this year we're going to have even more, probably around 700 or 800. It just continues to grow. And I would say, if you were to look at what might be programs that people are really happy with, one is the recycling collection, and the second one is the food scrap drop spots. So those are all really good things. The other thing we do is we have a household hazardous waste collection program to reduce toxicity of the waste. And 1,500 residents participated in that. And 22,000 customers were helped by either our online, you can ask questions or contact us, phone calls, or people coming into the office. We love working with our community, and I think many of you know that. And I wanted to quickly introduce, oh, look, it's up. Jeremy Betterly has been our communications coordinator for the last few years. And I'm happy to report that as we've reached full capacity, Jeremy is now our food scraps and organics recycling person that has to do with a lot of different programs that we're either doing or advancing. He meets people where they are. He's done many presentations, and we go to many, many groups and tours and all kinds of things, and he's very approachable. But we now have him in a new capacity. So where's Sarah? Sarah Nickerson is our new communications coordinator. Sarah comes to us with a strong environmental background in working on communication and outreach and education. She's already been going to events. I shared one. She happens to be a photographer, which comes in handy. And she and Dominic have built a really good relationship so far. So I'm pretty happy with that. The last person that's now on board is a person who's new but old. Kat McCarthy worked for me for 10 years, and she's going to be doing our waste reduction, reuse, environmental product procurement, advancing policies to this legislature about plastic pollution and many other environmental causes. So let me just get right into so you'll see a picture right here. This is the showcase of our program. Tons of money, tons of money, but great. And the public loves our drop spots. The haulers enjoy coming here because everybody's friendly. This is a contracted operation. And for those of you who are here in 2021, we had to make a very important decision on the part of the legislature, and Mike Lane led that. Because the price tripled and the markets for recycling revenue were so poor, there was a conscious decision as to whether or not we needed to continue recycling here and whether or not that was what was best. And it was unanimous that we needed to do that, but there were going to be increases in cost for that, and that continues. The theme of this year has been, for next year, is the CPI being so high and the fuel surcharge being so high. Many of the 8 programs we have are related to the hauling, the transportation.
Can you say what CPI is?
The Consumer Price Index.
Oh,
yeah. Yeah. And those are dramatic changes. And we are fortunate that we had higher recycling revenues, but that's really hard. But we are doing exactly what we said in the plan with Jason in terms of the financial management stability. Next slide, please. Oh, we already talked about that one. Why don't we go to the next one? That's my budget. It's right in front of you. And there's a lot of things that go into this $9 million. We have 8 programs. Remember, one important thing for those of you who may not be familiar, our department does not take any money from property taxes. It's all self-funded. We either have a disposal fee, which for the residents is a pay-as-you-throw system, and that's how the haulers pay the gate fee, or we have an annual solid waste fee, which everyone pays for, including the colleges, commercials, residentials, and more. And that is for all non-disposal programs, which are quite a few. We can get into that in a little bit. The change in the staffing is that our food scrap program is growing in leaps and bounds. We have 16 drop spots and we're planning on 5 more. My focus next year is to work in environmental justice areas where people may not be served well, where we need to reach out and really help them figuring out how to reduce waste and how also to recycle food scraps. but it's a pretty exciting program, and we're going to have one more driver, and we're going to have a quarter of a administrative person in here because the office sees on average 120 to 150 people a day. And we really have been robbing Peter to pay Paul in terms of having that coverage, because outreach is our basis. And then we have a few hours more for a scale operator so that we can have vacations, et cetera, there. Next slide, please. You're one behind. Perfect. Some good news and some new news. We have a lot of fees that go, that people have to pay for many things. So for the most part, nothing is changing next year other than the annual fee, which is going up by $5. And the other fee that's changing, it's a 20-year-old fee for permits for residents. And when you look at the actual cost of serving residents, it's really about $35 to $40, but we're going to only charge $30 because that's a pretty steep climb. But it's for 1 year and they can come as many times as they want. A lot of people are coming in for garbage because we're by far the cheapest game in town, because the haulers are charging around $6 a bag. And we can take these people in, they can pay by the coupon, they can pay by the punch card. The punch card is about $3 a bag. And people, it's kind of a one-stop shop for a lot of people to do a lot of recycling. We have over almost 18 materials that can be recycled at our facility, the single stream ones, but if you forget your curbside, you're away, you can still come and you can just drop those off. Yeah, that's about all I want to say, but all the other costs are remaining the same, fees for a lot of things. All right, the story, and I can tell that story. I'm not showing you from the time that we actually started charging an annual fee, which by the way was 52. But the story over the last number of years is that we've been adding programs over the last decade to help people to do a lot with their material and waste. We've seen a reduction in the waste stream by 60%. We are probably the best in the state, but I'm not going to say that out loud because Onondaga County will argue with me. But nevertheless, we're pretty proud of it. It works. And people really do have positive comments. I'm sure you've gotten them. And if we get negative comments, they come to me. So I do my best, but yeah. So we're very approachable. So if you look at this thing, what really happened is you'll remember terms like the green fence and what happened with China a number of years ago, where they stopped taking the US's material. It was very contaminated. And to be blunt, because I am, that had a lot to do with the private haulers that got into the recycling business and the way they set up their systems, in my mind, weren't the best practices for recycling. There wasn't enough education. And if you recall, what we've done is we did a lot of education. We said, please stop it. We want this to be a clean stream. Then we said, warning, Mike, you remember all this from your committee, warning, if you keep doing this to us and giving us the crap that's not acceptable on the list, then you're going to wind up with your recyclables left at the curb. And then we did that. And there were only at that point 200 or 300 residents out of 40,000 that weren't behaving. And some of them, it turns out, were seniors or just had barriers, and we absolutely helped them, but others just didn't care. And so now we're really at a very low level, and we're very, very happy. Our stream with our studies, the contamination rate last year was 3.5%. Most programs don't have a county involved. They just, the hauler services the residents, and they range between 15 and 25%. So we get a better price. Next slide. What's important about this slide is about half of our budget is paid for, the expenses are paid for through the annual fee. And those are the non-disposal costs. And you can see here, we're providing to you what those programs are. And $50 out of what we're proposing as 80 is for the recycling pickup for residents and small commercial, as well as the entire recycling program. And then, of course, we have the organics, we have waste reduction and education programs. We're still dealing with old landfills that were polluting, and we do a lot of environmental monitoring, and we pick up all the liquid, it's called leachate, that goes through pipes. It's treated at the Ithaca Waste Facility, and we have a relationship there. And then household hazardous waste is really important because so many people have toxics, most popular being paint. But we provide 6 collection days a year, and they're well attended. We had 1,200 in the past. Yes, you have a question.
Sorry, could I just add a clarifying question? I'm trying to, one, follow a presentation, but also follow it in the budget book, which they're not presented in the same way. So I just wanted to make sure these breakdown of revenues, these would be in the individual account numbers. Those would show the increases in revenues based on the $75
those are the
fee?
programs that we have in our budget. Many years ago, there was a legislator who transitioned us to a line item budget into a program-based budget for better understanding. And that's how we're sharing information, because I think it's pretty simple when you start to really look at what are these pieces. And then, of course, if you have more questions about it, I'm completely available for that. And that's correct. But the numbers that are in your budget book are completely valid because those are the millions of parts that make up the totals in each of the programs. Thank you. That's a very good question. If you go to the next slide. What this is it tells you not just about the annual fee costs, but also about what contribution garbage disposal is to haul the garbage to another landfill that's safer than anything else. Our county made a very important decision back in the days. I don't know if Mike, you remember Barbara Mink and Stuart Stein. They were responsible for working with me to realize that building a local landfill might be a huge money sink, which it's turned out to be in neighboring counties, and that we should support the recycling effort and ways to reduce waste. And that's what we did in terms of our programs to reduce waste. Mike led the funding committee, which needs to revive itself again this year, the financing committee. And this is a breakdown of everything that we pay for. Next slide, please. Unlike most departments, our department is only 15% of our cost is staff and fringes. Most of it is either nonprofits or private sector contracts that are the basis for how a lot of operations get done. We also have a contract with Cooperative Extension for a home composting program, as well as food waste reduction programs. We've been able to put back the Finger Lakes Reuse Center back into the budget, and we have anything that ranges from the recycling center to the liquid that goes through the landfills and it's trucked. And there's probably like 50, I haven't counted them lately, but 50 or 60 of those. It works. The partnerships work, but the most important thing that we decided many years ago is we need to be in control, because otherwise people will pay a fortune. And in other counties, the people in those counties pay about $250 for recycling collection and recycling. Whereas here, I mentioned to you, it's $50. And that was a really good decision that our legislators made. Revenue, you can just see real quick that the annual fee pays for half the budget. There's disposal fees and there's recycling revenues that make up the bulk of how things get paid for. There's a little bit in here that we're taking money out of the fund balance to help defray the cost, the annual fee. So just to give you a sense, the annual fee pays $1, pays for $50,000 of expense. So you can only imagine if we were putting it all on the annual fee for the, all of the programs but disposal, it would be a good $20 higher at a minimum. So that's how we're dealing with that. Pictures, again, super popular public drop-off area. It's clean, it's easy to use. We're going to put together a very brief video to help people and our customers. And they're really wonderful people. And the people that work as attendants are also really helpful. And that, that's a benefit. The next thing that I'm proud of are the food scrap drop spots. There's one in every municipality and there's more in some, like the city of Ithaca. And we have wonderful help from our consultants that get paid about $20 an hour, and it's a great job for them. It's a part-time job. So I think I'm done about like giving you a bigger picture of what's going on, but there's so many details you can only imagine with all of this. So I guess I'd like to open up for questions or comments or anything that I could go into. And don't hesitate during this next round, this budget process, to reach out to me. I'm very open to helping people understand things better.
Thanks, Barb. We've got Randy and Lee.
Thank you very much. I know you did some pavement work this past year, and I know you're planning on doing some scale work. You may be ahead of schedule on that, but is that a separate fund that pays for capital expenses?
There's a capital budget that we have that you're going to be, going over, and we've had one from the beginning of time. And so most of it comes from the annual fee. So what happens is it's an amortized cost. And so roughly $175,000 in next year's budget is the amortized cost of capital. So roughly speaking, that's like $3.5.
And I know you're looking at school systems as well to try to get them to do more recycling and food school systems.
Yeah.
Different schools.
Yeah,
I know many of them aren't doing food scraps, I believe, or whatnot. Is that something you're looking at, or?
There's a lot that we're doing with schools already.
Barb, can we ask you to use your mic?
Of course, I'm so bad at this. I'm sorry. There's a lot of programs in the schools. One of the things that so there's a lot of collection going on already in the schools. We used to do a lot of education in the schools and meet with school groups, et cetera. But because of COVID, that was really not we were not able to in the last few years. But I think what's important for you to know is school groups will, used to come take a lot of tours at the facility. We would work with the teachers to do programs, and because they've been so strapped, but I think that with things coming back now, we're going to rev up our plans in our 2023 work plan. But we were working with Trumansburg, Groton, Lansing, Ithaca. I can't even think of all of them, but we've been working extensively. I think we did a little bit of work in Newfield. So yeah, we'll go back to that more. You mentioned the scales, so I might as well give you the update. And I'm going to give a longer update to PDQ. With the waste scale inspection, the scale, which is almost 10 years old, was found to be structurally unsafe. And you can thank your Director of Weights and Measures for that. And as a result of that, the other one was,
For finding that out.
yeah,
Okay.
the other one was fine.
They didn't break it.
No, but we don't want anybody to, we didn't want to see a crisis, and it wasn't close to a crisis, but you know what? Better safe than sorry. So we received emergency approval from the county administrator and the finance department to move forward with getting a cost estimate, a design, and procuring another scale. And that is in the works. My estimate based on delivery of that new scale, because we're replacing all the cells, it's approximately $250,000. And the money is coming out of the capital account through the ARP funds. And then we're going to wind up delaying some other things that we had planned. So January is, in my mind, the date. We've been doing our best. We have 1 out of maybe 50 customers who whine, but the rest of them are very understanding about it. Yep, you're welcome.
Hate those whiners. Okay.
I don't mind them. I just, what do you do your best. What can I say?
Yep. Okay. I've got Lee and then Annie and then Veronica
Education.
and Greg.
Just an
Hi, Lee.
educational question. Hi, Barb. Have we met before?
I know.
Recycling and materials management, solid waste administration, local revenues, which wasn't there before. What is the $409,000?
Okay, that's a really good question. What that is it's money that is going to be taken out of our fund balance to balance the budget, which, our finance director has approved. Again, the $5 on the annual fee does not cover the increases in expenses that we incurred with the last recycling contract. However, just so you know, we have about a $2.5 million fund balance. It's my biggest part of my job, dealing with like the money part because we're self-funded, but $2.5 million on a $9 million budget, which, we're expecting to have about a 27% fund balance by the end of next year if everything with recycling revenue stays stable. And that's far more than the 16%. And if the state would ever give us some grant money back for what we've submitted, that would be nice too.
Thank you.
Yep.
Okay. Annie, Veronica, Greg.
Thank you. And if folks have more questions that we don't have time for tonight, if you think of more, Barbara will also, I presume you'll be here for PDEC on Monday, and that's at 1:30 on the Zoom, or you can be here in person.
Yeah, I have 3 items on that agenda.
Yeah, so including the scale replacement and the funding sources. So thank you. And just wanted to congratulate Jeremy on your promotion there, on your new job. That's great. And welcome to Sarah. And I know for Trumansburg, they're at the Trumansburg Farmers Market. People are there for this food scraps before the food scraps person gets there.
I know.
I mean, there's
It's a
people like
big
standing
hit,
there.
isn't it?
And the first time I saw it, I'll just cop to my own bias, was like, oh, they're here late. And no, and then I went to go talk to the people waiting in line because there was a line, and they said, oh, no, we just are
Well, you
we're just
also have
waiting here
one
every week to be able to
Thank you.
do
You
them."
have one on Saturdays at the Highway Barns too.
Oh, okay.
And if anybody wants one we are going to target, I really want to target Southside. And I want that one to be you don't need a car. And, we do have people in Fall Creek that wheelbarrow their stuff to CCE. So, I definitely, we'll find out more about how we can do that. We want to go to places that are underserved. We're adding more apartments that we have a grant with for low income. And again, if you have any ideas, this is how we share. You just tell me what you're thinking, and that way we can look at it.
That's all I had. Thank you.
Thank you, Annie.
Thanks, Annie. Veronica?
I'm impressed with the people lining up early because I'm the person like skating in at the last second, trying to drop my bag in whatever bin's not been cleaned up yet. But my question is, how is the glass recycling going? And is it impacting what you're seeing on people's curbside bins yet?
Yeah, thank you for asking. And actually, Sarah is putting together some public information that's going to clarify the differences between the curbside and the glass that's being dropped off directly. So the glass, so what happens is with mixed recyclables, you get all this broken glass, you get contamination. And the way in this state and many states, glass is being used is as landfill. It's called beneficiated use at a landfill. So instead of taking virgin soil, they cover it in part with the glass, which isn't the best thing in the world, because it used to be that we had a glass, we had glass equipment at a facility in Ontario County where the material was made right into bottles, but the companies, there were two, couldn't stay in business. It wasn't affordable. But what's going on is terrific. We just shipped our first load that got filled. Everybody likes to guess what they saw the most of in that. I think it's wine bottles, but it's been really successful so far. And there's lots of people using it. And we were doing it as a pilot because the way this is working is it goes to Tamra, which is exactly where the glass has been going from the grocery stores. And it took a bit to, really work on that, but it's here to stay because it's really popular, and we're going to let more people know about it. It is a bit of a challenge because how many bins can you have in your kitchen or whatever? But you can compartmentalize and figure it out. So it's going really well, and thanks for the question.
Great to hear. Thank you.
Yeah, nice to meet you. I don't think I've met you yet.
Good to meet you.
I have single stream bin in my kitchen, and then in the pantry, I sort it out from there, but okay.
Oh, we can do a little thing to find out what people are doing.
Greg.
Yeah, I might be the last question, but unfortunately I have several. So professional services line in your consolidated has grown quite a bit since 2020 from 4.1 million
Right.
to close to 6.8 million. That's based on contract?
$1.3 million increase plus CPI and fuel surcharge for the recycling and solid waste center contract. And then we have a number of other contracts. There, like I said, there's 50 or 60 of them. And the cost for household hazardous waste, for old landfills, and all these are procured. And then, we have our cubic compost, the food scrap hasn't increased. But if you take a look at the contracts page, that will key you in to what has been going on. But it's primarily the recycling collection contract increased by $500,000 as well. So that right there is the majority of the increase. And then there's smaller increases as well.
Do you foresee this continuing to increase at the dramatic rate that it has?
Dramatic rate, we're going to see some stabilization of those costs. But again, you've got to remember one thing that factors into that. It's a balance between revenues and expenses. And, again, the revenues dropped again over $850,000. And only this year did they start climbing. So while our expenses have gone up, we did see a rise in the revenues. I mentioned the grants. I just feel like everything died in terms of a few $100,000 that we have owed to us. That would be a big help to stabilize things. And we can talk more about how to deal with that, but it's been frustrating. And Martha Robertson tried a few years ago, but the majority of those costs are absolutely for recycling and recycling collection.
Okay. And then so my next question, are you currently staffed at 13.75 or 15.26?
We're staffed right now at 13.75, but we've had 2 vacancies.
And then, sorry.
Well, our staff actually was at about 16 point something about 5 years ago.
Yeah. And then so that $5 increase That solid waste fee is applied per
Household.
tax parcel? How do we define household?
It has 5 categories. Part is the colleges, and they pay about $250,000, unlike property tax. The other part is residential homes. The other part is the commercial by the square foot. Then there's also the seasonal ones, and there's one more.
And that bill shows up on which, their county tax bill?
Separate on their, well, for the residents, it's a separate line on their county tax bill. And one thing to know is that we did receive state enabling legislation and back when, and yeah, it's probably just Mike anymore that remembers that whole saga, but we do have, you know, the authority. What is really important with that annual fee and charging the commercials and the colleges is an opportunity for service. And one of our big programs is called the Rebusiness Partners Program, where we dumpster dive, we look at the opportunities to recycle and save money, and we provide them with the information. And we've done that for about 250 businesses, and that includes all the schools and a lot of nonprofits as well. It's a really good program to help them out.
Got it. So of the increase in revenues, that $5 equates to
$250,000
$250,000
in expense. And, you know, that's my point. The point is,
No, I mean, in revenue.
we need to make sure that our revenue streams are supported. And that's done this year. And I think it could be different next year. It's done right now with the annual fee, but that doesn't equate to a whole lot. And the fund balance that we've accumulated, our savings account that has 27% by the end of next year. We have more now, though.
When we look, this is, I guess, for Lisa and Norma, when we look at the impact to the household, do we factor in any increase in this fee as we talk holistically about the impact to an individual household? Or is it just the property tax?
We don't talk about the property tax here.
No, I know.
Oh.
This is more for Lisa.
Yeah, we stated in the budget, throughout the budget process, the increase in the tax levy as well as the increase in the actual amount of the solid waste annual.
Okay, so we look holistically.
That's correct.
Okay.
We also developed a plan that was adopted by the legislature about what the annual fee would at a minimum need to be. And that was $5 per year through 2024, 2025, I can't remember. Based on, you know, the decisions continue with recycling was the driver for these charges and continuing with those programs.
Taking into account the fact that it was costing considerably
3
more
times more
to contract for pickup and the revenues from, you know, selling our recyclables.
We really had a double whammy in the last few years. And, you know, there's a whole story to it, but not for today.
Barb, could you clarify how we charge households in multifamily and large apartment complexes?
The annual fee is, it's by units. That was my last category that I forgot to mention. It's the apartments.
Glad to help.
And they are billed based on the number of units, and that is billed to the owner of the property.
Thank you.
You bet.
Okay, Mike, did you have a question?
Just a comment, and I expect this isn't surprising to you, but
not at all.
With a healthy fund balance, recycling revenues raising, can we shave $1 or $2 off the annual fee?
Well, Mike, the problem with doing that, and we have this conversation every year, is that if you're going to take $400,000 out of your fund balance, it's not wise to limit the amount on the annual fee. I mean, it's uncomfortable enough that we have to take out of our savings to balance this budget. And the other thing is the variable here is recycling revenues. And I'll tell you straight that about 2 weeks ago, I started hearing and learning that recycling revenues are starting to fall for
Again?
fiber again, not to the levels of $10, $15 a ton. But if we were getting about $110 a ton, they fell to 80. That trend is going to continue till the spring. It's a supply demand. And I am conservative because what we had to do with our residents a couple of years ago when we were in serious financial standing was very uncomfortable for everybody. 400,000 out of savings. That is not a good thing to be working with when you're trying to
But at the
save a
same time, You're
dollar.
expanding your programs.
What's that?
You're expanding your programs. You're hiring people.
Addressing
No, I'm
need.
returning the number that I had before.
No,
I've been short too.
for the, like the food waste people.
You don't like the food waste, right?
I didn't say that,
Yeah, okay. I thought you said that to me once.
but I'm just saying you are expanding services. And, I have to go back to when the solid waste fee started. It was supposed to pretty much go away.
The more we recycle and reduce, then the less garbage that we have. So the less we have to pay
You know,
for
you're
the
looking at it-
contracting
yeah, you're looking at it
services.
from
Cost to recycle are going up.
And you're right in how you're looking at it. But I think what matters the most is what the residents and others are really paying as opposed to what we're charging. And there's a big difference.
Agree. That's why I'm worried about what they have to pay.
There's no such thing as a free lunch.
Well, but if, you're seeing $1 million increase, you can't possibly cover that with $5, let alone $4. Yeah.
Barb, you've always been a great manager of your budget, and I want to give you a compliment for that. It's true. But I do think we should be seriously looking at the annual fee and seeing how we can not have that jump
Yeah.
up so fast.
I totally agree with you. And what really needs to happen is that there needs to be policymakers and certain staff getting back together to look at how the annual fee is charged and what should be paid by whom. And Lisa and I have talked about that extensively, and I believe that's something that's going to be done next year. You're welcome.
Shauna, did you have a comment?
Yeah, I guess I was just wondering, over the years, Mike, how many constituents have you actually had approach you about the concerns for the increase?
How many?
How many constituents have you actually had?
Over the years?
Yeah.
Plenty.
Have you? Wow.
Have you recently?
I have not
Recently?
had a single one in 5 years.
Have you ever
Me
had
neither.
anybody talk about their tax bill?
Absolutely, constantly.
Yeah, so I think part of the thing is though, is where the fee shows up. So I don't think by saying that somebody's not necessarily directly said anything about, they just see a total number. They don't maybe look and break it down. I'm not saying all people, we have a relatively educated
I think
community.
this is probably a debate that is more appropriate when we start discussing the budget among ourselves and the OTRs. So if there are no further questions for Barbara, we're going to call an end to this.
Thank you.
Thank you, Barb.
Thank you very much.
Good night, everybody.
That was fun. So I can't recycle.
Clap after every.